Be over there, Matt?
That's the one I used to get the.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the December 17th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30. Just note that we will also have a County Commissioners meeting tonight after the Select Board meeting. I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda, so we'll accept the agenda as written. We do have Malcolm McNabb online tonight, so we'll be doing all of our votes via roll call. Malcolm, I just want to confirm that you can hear me and I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Thank you. And we will move to announcements. I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. There are no select board meetings next Wednesday, the 24th, or the following Wednesday, the 31st. The next board meeting is Wednesday, January 7th. Town offices will be closed on Thursday, December 25th in observance of Christmas, and Thursday, January 1st in observance of New Year's Day. The select board will be holding its annual public hearing on the proposed fiscal 27 general fund budget on Wednesday, January 14th, here in this room at the normal meeting at 5:30. And that is it for announcements.
Are there any opening select board announcements or comments?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, something had just occurred to me. That email situation we got from Plus today, is Leslie going to talk about that, or should we mention it? Okay.
Here.
Leslie, maybe do that as a quick announcement.
Okay, great. Leslie Snell, Director of Planning. This is to let the public know that the town of Nantucket has been made aware of fraudulent emails circulating to the public that falsely claim to be from me, the planning director. And there's a request for payment and an invoice. Please note that town of Nantucket official email addresses always end in @nantucket-ma.gov. The town does not use third-party email domains such as @usa.com to conduct official business or to request payments. If you receive an email that appears to be suspicious that has an invoice, please do not open the attachment or click on the links. Please do not send payment or provide any personal information, and verify any requests that you do receive using a second method of communication, such as calling the department directly, using a phone number listed on the town's official website. So thank you for your diligence and cooperation. And just know that the town of Nantucket has no control over people sending these emails or stopping them from being sent.
Thank you very much, Leslie.
Thank you. Any select board comments? Okay. Just one thing I wanted to note is I'd like to just formally on the record, I've talked to the town manager about this, request that when town staff is presenting to the select board, if at all possible, that they be present in the room. We need to get back to a post-COVID world of having some people in person. It's a much different feel. Next up, we have an update on public comments from prior select board meetings, and I have a couple of pages to read. From December 10th, Clifford Williams, can we get the minutes to the meetings Dr. McNabb had with the investigator? This is in reference to the African Meeting House investigation. Town response: there are no meeting minutes from the meetings Dr. McNabb held with the investigator, as those meetings were informal in nature, not subject to the open meeting law, and were authorized by the committee and or the select board. Next, can you show me the bylaw that only the select board can conduct investigations? Town response. General laws C-41-21B is the statutory reference for the proposition that only the select board is authorized by law to investigate a town department. In addition, the town meeting vote to appropriate funds for the African Meeting House investigation expressly states that the investigation is to be conducted by the select board. The town does have a general bylaw, 11.4B, that authorizes the finance committee to investigate the expenditures of any monies by the town officials and notify the select board in writing as to whether or not, in its opinion, the expenditure is or was justified. This may have been the source of authority for the airport procurement investigation by the finance committee, and or the select board may have delegated its authority under C-41-23B. How much money has been spent so far on the lawsuit filed by Rosemary Samuels and James Barrows? The town's response, it's $124,000. Amy Eldridge asked, after the tour of the Loran Barracks tomorrow, will any information be available? Town response, the select board will provide an update of the tour findings at a future meeting. I will note that Amy did actually attend the tour. Charity Benz, in regard to the Christmas stroll fight on Federal Street, was there a permit for exceeding approved capacity as well as loud decibel music? Town response, there is no permit to exceed approved capacity. Capacity is determined by the building commissioner and inspections are conducted by the building and fire departments. There is no decibel limit in the Nantucket bylaws for entertainment with the exception of street performers. For stroll, restaurants were allowed to request a one-day special entertainment permit so long if it was not in violation of any building or fire codes, meaning interior live music where sprinklers are required. 2 requests were approved for a DJ on patios, boarding house, and Billy's for a private function. Are establishments that plan to hold events such as this required to hire police presence? Town response, licensed restaurants are not required to hire police details. Are bartenders and wait staff required to cut off overserved patrons? Town response, yes, bartenders and staff are required to be fully trained in recognizing someone who is intoxicated and must stop or refuse service to intoxicated individuals. Are we marketing Christmas stroll to be a drunken fest, or do we want stroll to be a family-friendly weekend? Town response, Christmas stroll weekend is organized and marketed through the Chamber of Commerce. The chamber works very closely with all town departments to implement safety measures across the board. Town policy is to not issue any one-day pouring permits to shops or other unlicensed establishments downtown during stroll. The only alcohol service should be through licensed facilities. The chamber can comment directly on their marketing and efforts to promote family-friendly activities. Andy Lowell commented that it'd be nice if more information regarding the scale tipping fees changes were shared with the public in the next tax bill. Town response, the tipping fees information has been available on the town's website for years. Regarding outreach, the DPW and Communications Office are nearing completion of a significant update and restructuring of the solid waste web pages, intended to make information easier for the public to find. Tipping fee information will remain available on the website once these updates are completed. In addition, the town is currently reviewing all tipping fees, including what services are charged, how fees are structured, and how costs are allocated. Staff expect to present recommendations to the select board for review and consideration in February. Town staff are available to answer questions and discuss concerns related to solid waste services. Contact information is posted on the town website. That concludes the follow-up. Next up, we have public comment on our agenda. The public comment policy is public comment is for items not on the board's agenda for discussion. Each speaker will be allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes. The chair will curtail verbal comments exceeding the allotted time. A recognized speaker may not cede or assign their time to another unless such an assignment is required as reasonable accommodation for such person because of a disability. Public comment is listened to by the board. Matters raised during public comment are not required to and are unlikely to be addressed or resolved by the public body at the same meeting. Response by the town may be provided at a subsequent meeting, as well as on the website. So with that being said, is there anyone here to speak under public comment this evening?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? I suspect that there's some folks here to talk about the decision of the school committee last night. Is that fall under our agenda item of continued review of town sponsored warrant articles, or are we doing that in public, allowing them to speak in public comment?
I would think it would be under warrant articles.
Yeah, I would say it's probably up to the board. There is going to be a discussion a bit later in the board's agenda under fiscal, it's under the town manager's report, item 2, fiscal 27 capital projects review. The projects aren't specifically listed there, but they are in the packet information, which is online. So I hate, well, you'll get a good review of the town budget ahead of that. But it is an agenda item. And the
Thank you
superintendent
for the
is here
clarification.
to, I think, review it.
Madam Chair, select members of the select board. My name is Joe Wright. I'm here tonight, not as a representative of the Finance Committee where I serve, but to give you my own opinion. Tonight, I want to talk about the allocation of 2 scarce resources: the willingness and ability of residents to see and afford increases in their real estate taxes, and the energy and time spent by town management and the select board to develop and propose necessary capital expenditure projects for consideration at the ATM. Real estate tax increases are restricted to 2.5%, except when the ATM approves capital projects which require special outside and incremental financing, resulting in incremental tax. Our Island Home is one such project, and the sewer project is one of the others. Each project is developed by the different town departments. Each of the larger ones require a great deal of work before the town administration approves it for consideration by the select board or and the finance committee before going to a town meeting. David Gray will speak later this evening about one of them, the Somerset Needs Area Sewer, which will service some 400 homes and cost $43 million. This project has been under consideration for many years and is approved by the Mass Department of Utilities. It's possible that they could ask us to do it. I have reviewed the current list of projects which have made it to consideration by Capcom. Excluding Our Island Home, there are a total of 56 projects, which total about $104 million. There are 6 which are over $5 million. Some, but not all, will require incremental financing like Our Island Home. There has been talk of deferring some of the larger items for fear that with Our Island Home at $135 million, the scarce resource of incremental real estate tax appetite will result in the larger items not being approved at the annual town meeting. In fact, at a recent town meeting, a member of the select board talked about their fear of the crowding out of projects which need approval. There are large and real uncertainties regarding the cost of Our Island Home today. Almost certainly, tariffs and inflation will produce a total cost of more than last year's $135 million. A survey which was conducted by the select board to assess the citizens' view of Our Island Home did not clearly demonstrate that there was 66% approval required for ATM passage. The effect of the federal government's reduction in reimbursement for medical costs is a meaningful part of Our Island Home's income and is yet another.
Joe,
uncertainty.
your time is up.
Pardon?
Your time is up. Your 3 minutes are up.
I have two.
But I will also say you've definitely gone into something that should be under warrant articles.
This is, what I'm saying is, it'll be just days before town meeting when we have a better sense of the cost of.
Joe,
by
if you
far
want
the
to
lar-
talk about warrant articles, please wait till that agenda item. Please. I'll give you another opportunity to speak beyond your 3 minutes.
Yeah, Tony Buscarin. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of the Airport Commission. At present, Nantucket Moorings has an exclusive franchise to rent moorings in Nantucket Harbor. The cost of these daily moorings has greatly increased in the past years. The cost of a mooring is based on the length of a boat. A 35-foot long boat is charged about $100 a day. A larger boat, more money. Keeping a boat with Nantucket moorings for a 100-day summer season is about $10,000. There is no preference for Nantucket year-round residents. This cost eliminates all but the wealthiest from access to moorings in Nantucket during the summertime. There is a wait list for private moorings maintained by the harbor master. I've been on that mooring list for 11 years and move up about 4 spots a year. I'm currently number 40 on the list. I'm 81 years old. I'll have to be 103 by the time I get a mooring on Nantucket. It is proposed that a Nantucket residents eligible to vote in Nantucket be given a preference to lease moorings from Nantucket moorings at a reduced rate of 40% of the published rate, or give some preference so that we have access, year-rounders, to renting moorings in Nantucket. I think preference might be given to people who are already on the mooring wait list. Appreciate your interest in that matter. And if you could put that on your agenda, I'd love to address it further, ask any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand up online, Emily Moulton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily Molden here from the Nantucket Land and Water Council. I just wanted to quickly take a moment to thank the town for the public presentations that you have been hosting on PFAS-related issues this fall and winter. I was able to attend and participate in the one that Andrew Shapiro hosted last Thursday, and I think they're a valuable educational resource for the community, and I just wanted to acknowledge them and thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thornwell. This is about the African Meeting House. I just wanted to remind the selectmen that I asked a series of questions two meetings ago, and they haven't yet been answered. They were why in the addendum were some work group comments not included in the final version as the work group requested? 2, who authorized the RFP removal of section 3.5 quality control, and why would you do that? And then 3, please explain to us how the removal of the work group's work from section 3.5 being taken by the selectmen makes any sense, because there's clearly a conflict of interest. And 4, why wouldn't the chair go out of his way as our leader to make individual phone calls to us to bring us up to date so we don't have to keep coming back here? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak this evening?
Hi, Christy Ferrantella, the Housing Director. Just an announcement that didn't make it in time for the community is that the Affordable Housing Trust released the year-round deed restriction pilot program round 2. This is on the town's procurement website for anybody interested in placing a year-round or affordable housing deed restriction in exchange for cash. You can learn more on the Affordable Housing Trust's website, and applications will be accepted for the next 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing no other comments this evening. We will move to approval of the minutes, treasury warrants, and pending contracts.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously, 1 through 3. And then town managers report.
Thank you. The first item is our fiscal 2027 general fund budget presentation. So this is going to be done between the finance director and myself, and I wanted to give you an introduction, which I typically do at this presentation. Section 4.2D3 of the town charter requires the town manager to prepare and submit to the select board an annual operating budget. The document in the board's packet is a summarized presentation containing an overview of updated projections, our recommendations, and next steps. And sidebar, I think we're having a little trouble with the screen right now. So if you're able to look online, that's where this is. So the finance director and I are going to take you through the presentation. We also have a budget transmittal letter and a message which explains the recommendations, projections, and various issues in detail. And we will provide an overview of that as well following our presentation. Our fiscal 27 budget process begins with a preliminary budget overview with the board. We held that on August 20th. Budget instructions were issued to the departments on September 8th. A preliminary budget update was reviewed with the board on October 22nd. We have reviewed every general fund and enterprise fund department budget with the individual departments, plus with the cabinet as a whole from mid-October through the end of November. Along the way, we conduct research, analysis, review, reconsideration, evaluation of new or additional information. Okay, go to slide 2, if you can. Our fiscal 27 goals and initiatives are covered over these next 2 slides. Our standard objective is to keep the recommended operating budget within projected revenue. We are addressing focus areas of the board's strategic plan in our budget recommendation, with particular emphasis on the housing focus area. We're focusing on infrastructure maintenance and improvements, new facilities. Our biggest projects are shown here. And we have other projects, but these are the most significant due to their expense. We are continuing to address staffing issues with a variety of strategies. We're actively working on operationalizing the concept of sustainability. I think you can go to the next slide. Throughout town government, and in particular with applicable projects. Several of our town facilities are in growing need of attention. We have recently done some much needed renovations to the Culture and Tourism Office. And you heard about this in the Culture and Tourism Departmental Report a couple of weeks ago. We have a public restroom improvement project in the works. We're beginning planning for interior repairs and improvements, including code issues at the 20 South Water and 16 Broad Street buildings. This potentially will involve the need for temporary relocations of staff, and that will lead to one of our budget request items, which we'll cover shortly. Capital planning and project management remain priorities. And because it has been difficult to dedicate resources not already committed to other functions to give projects the attention required, we are having to engage and rely on outside consultants and engineers, which also require oversight. While we have been able to secure funding for and fill a project manager position in town administration, there are more projects than there are resources to manage. Again, as managed last year, management of town-controlled housing has become extremely time-consuming for several staff people. We were able to fill our rental property manager position in the housing department in fiscal 24. That's been instrumental for town employee housing management. However, with even more units being rented and or owned by the town, the task of overseeing management and maintenance has superseded our one position. The volume and complexity of managing the growing number of town housing units requires more resources. Brian's going to take us through the next 5-ish slides. Yeah.
Thank you, Libby. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. So after much work, we're projecting revenue for fiscal 27 of $170.4 million. The projected and recommended expenses are $170.2 million, leaving projected unused levy capacity of 136,000, which is probably a little bit lower than we would like. There's a long way, as we always mention, between now and town meeting. So we're going to have to manage very carefully any changes to the fiscal 27 budget with only that amount of projected unused levy capacity available. Can you go to the next slide, please? So in this presentation, it's on the screen, it just kind of breaks down the various revenue sources. Property tax revenue is estimated to be 133.8 million. The next largest would be rooms and meals tax. We're projecting 14.8 million there. Level funding state aid at 5.3 million. The legislature just had their general or joint consensus on revenue for next year, and they're still working through that. So they haven't even started their budget yet. So we're level funding state aid, which is one of the next largest single contributors to our budget. And then we break down the expenditures between municipal departments, school department, non-departmental, and special appropriations, which we'll take you through individually in the next slide. Next slide, please. Start with Erica. Town operational expenses, we're projecting 13.4 million. Operational expense increase request of 1.8 million, which are included in that $13.4 million number. Town salaries, we're projecting a total of 31.2 million and includes forecasted rollovers currently for all town employees. Personnel increase requests we're recommending of 647,000. Those are included in the $31.2 million town salary number. School operational expenses, after working with Martin, the CFO at the school, we're recommending $7.1 million for the school. Why does that say school operational twice? Oh, 7.8 is the number. I'm sorry. With operational increases, school EIRs, I'm sorry, of 1,045,000. That other line shouldn't be there. School salaries, school gave us a number, forecasted rollover of $37.4 million. Next slide, please, Erica. Health insurance, active employees, $14.8 million, retirees, $5.1 million. So projected increase year over year budget of about 8.9%, but internally in the calculation, the rates the actual insurance rate is projected to increase just under 11%, but because of changes in health plans, people moving around or coming off or people not taking it, the actual year over year increase is projected at 8.9%, but the actual rate built into the entirety of the projection for next year's rate is just under 11%. General insurance, 5.1% increase at $5.8 million. The reason we're projecting a lower rate here is we believe, since we're going to be putting the entirety of our property program out, which is our largest insurance, we believe that and changes we made to our cyber program will generate some increases that we've been able to, or decreases, excuse me, that we'll be able to deploy through the rest of the budget. Debt service, 16 million per the amortized schedule for general obligation bonds. Retirement, 8.5% increase at 8.2 million. Enterprise fund subsidies, 12.5 at 2.5% increase. Next slide. Mosquito control, 2.5%, 195,000. Health and Human Services, 825,000, which is made up of 175 from the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund and 650,000 from the General Fund. County assessment, 250,000, which we will take you through in the county presentation later on this evening. Reserve fund, 500,000, no change. Currently, we don't know of any unpaid bills, but if there are any, we would fund them through free cash. Other post-employment benefits, 500,000. Affordable Housing Trust Fund, 6,999,000, which is a 2.5% increase. Overlay and other deficits, we project none. Cherry sheet, 1.3 million, which is level funded from the current fiscal 26 budget. Community school, no change at 600,000, and minimum capital funding, which is 1% of prior year real and personal property taxes and local estimated receipts, 1.5 million. All told, 170,295,000. Next slide, please, Erica. 2027 town expense increase request does not include the school. It's all just general fund departments. $4.2 million requested, made up of 1.2 million in one time and 2.9 million in ongoing. Recommended $2.9 million of ongoing, made up of one-time expenses increase request of $1 million and ongoing of 1.9. Next slide. And this is where I will transition to the town manager going through the recommended EIRs.
Thank you, Brian. Recommendations for EIRs are based on the following criteria. Legal mandate, high prioritization is given for requests that support the strategic plan and or are recommended in our 2018 staffing study. It improves departmental operations and efficiency. It's necessary to support new programming or existing programming, and it provides continuity of operations. Each EIR is ranked using a point system. And I want to make a note about these EIRs. We have received, and we pretty much annually receive, a significant amount of these. And while we have this year funded many of them, we cannot fund all of them. We have to take the big picture into consideration. We are fortunate here in Nantucket to be able to fund what we are recommending, which is less than half of what was requested. The revenue increase from the room occupancy tax is allowing us to put forward recommendations to address areas which cannot progress without additional resources. However, we must caution that we exercise conservative use of that revenue. And I may be sounding slightly like a broken record because I think Brian and I have been using this same message for the last several years. For one thing, some of the budget items being recommended are ongoing and they will require continued funding into the future in order to continue. Secondly, we believe the funding source is still not at a point where the amount received in fiscal 25, so far in fiscal 26, and being projected for fiscal 27 can be fully relied on to remain at those levels due to economic impacts and potential legal challenges that we cannot control and possible changes in how short-term rentals are regulated in Nantucket. So as far as the specific EIRs go, on the personnel slide, we are proposing 9 new positions, some additional appropriation for budgets that have had personnel line items exceeded in the last fiscal year due to workload or excessive overtime because of a particular situation or situations, onboarding costs, and expansion of a successful internship program townwide that we launched formally in fiscal 26. The new positions are necessary to implement board goals and keep up with increased demands in certain areas, such as project management and employee housing. They are needed to maintain a level of municipal services that a growing community requires, including public safety and enforcement, and to address at least one unfunded mandate. On the expense side, can we go to the next slide, please? We are recommending one-time expenses for an operational review of our facilities division of the Department of Public Works with multiple standalone municipal facilities, most of which are in need of repair, maintenance, or will be in the very near future. We do not believe the division has sufficient staffing and or contracted resources, or we are using contracted resources which are expensive, not always available or responsive. We are looking for ways to get the division more efficient and effective. We are putting forward the lease of an office trailer. This is a preemptive expense we believe will likely be needed for work at existing facilities that could necessitate temporary relocations and or new facilities that might also necessitate that. Town offices are bursting at the seams. We need swing space for consultants, hybrid employees. Meeting space for boards, committees, and commissions is becoming more and more difficult to accommodate. We have several requests related to one-time expenses for non-recurring costs. We are seeking funding for an IT assessment, that is to supplement an assessment most recently undertaken in 2016 and 17. The IT environment, as I think hopefully we all know, is rapidly changing. We would like to ensure that we are current with best management practices, staffing, and technological advances. Next slide, please. We also have a significant number of ongoing expense requests to address increased operational costs and non-discretionary costs, such as utilities, software licenses, mailing, things of that nature. Contractual expenses, as well as materials, supplies, travel costs are almost always increasing. In addition to the one-time office trailer item, we have put in an offer for office rental space near the airport. We have reviewed that with the board. Some programs started in the last year or two are recommended to continue with ongoing expenses, such as the wastewater treatment testing through the health department for a variety of environmental health and substance abuse indicators. Brian, you're going to do the next couple.
Correct.
Please.
So we're proposing funding the $2.9 million through $1.6 million through the tax levy and other general revenues. Free cash consistent with the town's free cash policy, we would fund the $1,087,000 in one-time expenses. The Affordable Housing Trust, we would split the cost of the rental property manager with, so the town would assume $60,000 of that cost. The revolving fund for STR registrations would pay for a portion of the building inspector that has been recommended due to some increased inspections related to building office for around short-term rentals. Revolving fund for beach stickers would pay for the $55,000 related to Harbor Master through the seasonal overtime and overtime lines. And then food inspections revolving fund, since the Board of Health recently did change their inspection fees effective January 1st, there's approximately about another $15,000 in additional revenue that will be brought into those revolving funds that we can allocate a portion of the inspector's times to the food inspection revolving fund. All told, those sources total the $2.9 million of recommended EIRs. Next slide, please. Preliminary free cash recommendations. Free cash is still in the hands of DOR. The tax rate was just recently certified. We had hoped that they would review them simultaneously. They did not. They are going to shortly undertake a review of our free cash, so we don't have an exact number at this point, but we believe it will be consistent at a minimum with the number just over $15.2 million last year. Recommending $1 million for the town one-time expense increase request, $277,500 for some one-time expense increase requests at the school. And then in the capital presentation, you'll also see this, but $8.2 million recommended from free cash to fund school and town capital requests. Consistent with prior years, once we do have free cash certified, we will likely make recommendations to town meeting potentially to fund some additional funds into stabilization, potentially capital stabilization, potentially our other post-employment stabilization fund, which funds the long-term payout liabilities for accrued sick and vacation time, and then potentially into on top of the initial 500,000 we raise and appropriate, potentially another transfer into the OPEB trust fund. And this is where I will turn it back over to the town manager.
Thanks, Brian. Outstanding items and current unknowns are shown on this slide. State aid is always somewhat of a concern, and while the state has not yet finalized its budget for fiscal 27, we are projecting level funding. None of the citizen warrant articles have been included in our recommendations. They typically have not been. Some of these, if approved and determined to be implemented, could have a cost impact, which has not been fully analyzed at this point. If any of these items are approved by voters, funding may not either be immediately available or priorities will have to shift. Escalating construction costs have impacted recent projects. This is not necessarily unique to Nantucket. However, obviously it is more significant due to our location and associated complications. The costs of projects in the Coastal Resiliency Plan are astronomical, and we will need to prioritize these and seek alternate sources of funding wherever possible, which is an ongoing activity. We made a significant time investment into preparations for the expiration of the waste services agreement for the solid waste operation. There are increasing costs to managing solid waste on Nantucket caused by regulatory requirements and other factors such as travel and disposal at off-island facilities. While we do have a retirement assessment projection, we have not actually received the definitive increase from the Barnstable County Retirement Association, but generally it's what we put forward as a projection is pretty reliable. The offshore wind settlement fund. This could be a potential funding source for specific projects once any claims have been filed and paid through the established process, and information is coming out very shortly on that. The board heard a overview of that program back in November. Baxter Road alternative access remains under review to be paid back through betterment assessments, and that is complex due to the potential amount of the assessments. Our Island Home, that I think we were going to give this presentation last week, but as we know, we had the Island Home, which mostly took up most of the meeting last week, and that is going to be on the warrant in the election ballot. Next slide, please. 16, future potential costs. So a number of future and potential costs are listed on this slide. Some of them we've already covered. We have numerous plans in place and or are in the process and or plans that are in the process of being updated or started. All of them contain projects that will have a cost impact. Some overlap and can be combined. We have discussed employee retention and housing. In addition to town employee housing, community workforce housing is an ongoing goal and has associated costs as well. There are numerous parallel efforts at work with affordable housing, as well as significant investment in town employee housing. While we now have an IT position dedicated to cybersecurity, the cost could be enormous if the town system becomes compromised due to a cybersecurity attack. And I'm going to take the opportunity to note yet again that it is worth routinely reminding everyone of the need to be vigilant with cybersecurity, including all town officials who have town emails, including the school department. NRTA service modifications could have an impact on the general fund budget through the state assessment to the town, while the state's pilot program for free public transit service throughout the state has been extended at the state's expense. We do not know if our state assessment could eventually be impacted. Hopefully that is a permanent situation with the state, but you never know. Potentially, the recently launched on-demand service could free up funding to allow for seasonal service expansion. And I know from the administrator that he is definitely planning some of that for this coming summer. Also, if we want to seriously reduce traffic congestion, people will have to use alternative forms of transportation besides personal vehicles. PFAS costs remain a high concern. They're also largely unknown, but regulatory requirements are on the way from state and/or federal government, and this may necessitate significant capital and operating costs in the fairly near future. Additionally, some recent public well testing has shown levels of PFAS, which, while extremely low, may require remediation and/or treatment, and the extent of that is not yet fully understood. We are realizing, as I referred to earlier, increased maintenance and operational costs of our aging facilities. Space is at a premium. Many of our buildings are showing signs of wear and tear. Enforcement resources are insufficient, and enforcement can be complex, not as easy as it might sound. Unfunded regulatory mandates are always a concern. And with the new short-term rental inspection requirement that the finance director mentioned, we are working to determine how best to address it, given the number of short-term rentals the island has, much more than most seasonal communities. A bylaw to authorize the adoption of stormwater regulations has been proposed for the 2026 annual town meeting. This will result in the need for more staffing and possibly equipment and associated contractual resources, as well as a plan to at least partially fund those through fees. Those who will have to pay these fees are not likely to welcome the payment of those fees. However, a fee structure will need to be established in order to address increasing costs and issues with stormwater due to more roads, other more impervious surfaces, more development, climate change, sea level rise. The island, whether you agree with climate change and sea level rise and groundwater rise or not, it is actually happening. The island has a significant amount of stormwater infrastructure to construct and maintain. These need to be funded somehow. Lastly, an override. I hate even using that word, but the Mass Municipal Association recently completed a report analyzing fiscal pressures on Mass cities and towns. Their report is online on their website. There was a webinar held with municipal officials about a week ago on it. And if people are hopefully interested in what's going on across the state with fiscal pressures, they should definitely take a look at this report. There are a number of recommendations contained in it, which may require local option action. In every city and town, there's only so much revenue available to fund increasing expenses from regular operating expenses to employee compensation and benefits, to projects, equipment, municipal programs, and unfunded mandates. Nantucket is no exception. Our cost of living amplifies that gap. The budget message references the need to discuss putting forward an override, quote, soon, and we mean most likely in the next 2 to 4 years. School and town expenses are projected to overcome projected revenue within that timeframe. I think that is mostly a conclusion to this presentation. I wanted to sincerely thank Deputy Town Managers Rick Sears and Greg Tibnan, Finance Director Brian Turbot, Deputy Finance Director Sue Carmel, and a very special thanks to our budget and financial analyst, Stephen Hunter. Stephen is not in the
He's
room.
on, he's online because he's going to share OpenGov and take.
Yes,
go
but
through it.
Stephen has done a major amount of work to put our presentation together, and we really appreciate it. I'm not going to say we abuse Stephen. I don't think we abuse him, but we do decide something and then make him change it 25 times. So we appreciate his patience. Also, the department heads for their assistance and the process that we use to develop the budget. So Stephen, okay, forget next steps. You do have a public hearing on January 14th to endorse the recommended budget, and obviously the board is free to modify it as it sees fit. On January 20th, we will be making this presentation most likely, or whatever the board adopts on the 14th, to the school committee. From mid-January to mid-March, the FinCom reviews the general fund and enterprise fund budgets and other financial appropriations. And we culminate with Monday, May 4th for the 2026 annual town meeting, followed by the annual town election on Tuesday, May 19th. So I'm gonna turn back over to you, Brian, and possibly Stephen to review
Okay.
OpenGov.
Stephen,
And the
just
budget
hold on
message?
1 second. But Stephen's going to open it up and show us
Okay.
OpenGov, which is what we had tried to roll out last year. And in all honesty, Stephen's work is why we're here with OpenGov. And I think it's a much better way to produce and view the budget, and it'll allow the public to get into it and see a lot of the detail that we share with the board. So you're good, Stephen, at this point to take us to the OpenGov page. So when you land on this page from the town budget website, you get a table of contents, which has an overview. We're going to start with the town manager's transmittal letter, which is here, which the town manager referenced in her opener presentation. One of the really great features, and I think one of the things that is really great about OpenGov, is that Stephen's going to show you in the drop down, but the public can go and they can translate this into at least 60 different potential languages that they would like to. And when you click on one, it'll automatically translate it into whatever you've chosen, the entirety of the budget book that's online. So I think that's a really great step for the town forward for people able to go in to see this. So in the overview, next slide or next step is just an overview of the budget process. We have an overview of governmental structure in there. The next portal is the general fund recommendations, which we just took you through, but it provides all the detail, the budget messages in there, overview of revenues, expenditures, and you can just scroll through them at your leisure, and the public can go in and drill down into these as well. And then the next tab over is where all the stories and recommended funding for every single department in the general fund resides. So it's finance and operations he pulled up. It's our mission statement, what we're doing, comparative to last year, budget basis. There's a lot more information, I think, for this, for the public and for you as the board. And then we have included all of the enterprise funds in this and as well. And then the last slide is the last section is all of the appendixes that may be referenced in the budget message. And when you click on them, it'll take you right to this slide to show you all this information. So I want to thank Stephen personally because, as Libby said, we reviewed this and there are times when he had to make probably 15 changes in a day to something as we went back and forth on it. And he just went back and did it and really put his head down and helped create a really, really great document for the town. So I really do want to thank him for all of the efforts that he put into this.
Ditto. Thank you again, Stephen and Sue and everybody else. So I think at this point we are ready to take any questions if the board has any. This is on your agenda again on January 7th, in case you think of things between now and then that you don't think of right now. And then the public hearing on the 14th. Any questions, comments? Tom?
Madam Chair, yeah, I just have a quick comment. Going through this presentation, it just really makes you think the breadth of operations the town has to deal with. And when something unforeseen comes up, like the ferry route speed restrictions or the turbine break or et cetera, that a lot of this stuff gets thrown off because town admin only has so much bandwidth and ability
to manage so many things at one time. And I think this is a testament to how well the town is run. And I think everyone should be proud of our town for how well it's run, and that we have a AAA bond rating and we have a good relationship with the Commonwealth. And I'm just really happy to see it. And I think it's great work.
Thank you very much, Tom. We really appreciate that. It's a huge, huge team effort.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. The next town manager report is fiscal 2027 capital projects review, continued from December 3rd. So I want to just say a little bit about this. We have an updated presentation just to quickly take you through to remind us what debt excluded capital projects there were and other capital projects. And very specifically, I think there's been a lot of discussion since the Island Home decision as to what, if anything else, should be put as a debt exclusion on the town meeting warrant. And that decision doesn't necessarily have to be made tonight, but it will need to be made by your meeting on January 22nd so that the warrant can be adopted with whatever we're going to be putting forward. And we have a lot of projects, and they are not cheap. And we already heard someone start talking about the impact on taxes, and that's a real issue for many people on the island. So I know that it's a tough situation and decision. There is a very large, maybe I shouldn't say very large like that. There's a significant sewer extension project that we want to review with you. Last week, there was some discussion about it, and we have since done some additional work on how that project could be funded. And we want to also let the board know what some potential implications might be if that project does not move forward for fiscal 27. And I think there is sort of newish news about the school's project, and including the number of how much it would potentially cost. So hopefully we will turn to the superintendent for that. And the finance director and deputy will take us through this sort of updated presentation from last week.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you to the members of the board. Last week, we did take you through a lot of this, so I'm just kind of going to work towards the updated slides. But information systems, town admin, housing, natural resources, $12.1 million worth of capital, $7 million being the most notable within those departments for town employee housing, design, and construction. Next slide, if you would, please, Erica. Public safety being fire, police, and marine, $8.8 million. The most notable there being the seasonal housing improvements phase 4 at $5.4 million. Next slide, please, Erica. Public Works, Central Fleet and Facilities, $2.4 million. As we mentioned last week, the most notable here is the potential supplemental funding of $1.2 million to complete the DPW facility final design and take us to bid specs to be able to bid the project. Continued here, Parks and Recreation, $15.6 million. Tom Nevers debris, phase 2. Phase 1, I believe, is actually started this week, is $8 million. So that's the most notable there as well. Next slide, please. Education, $27.9 million. As the town manager mentioned, the school is here based probably with respect, excuse me, to the track and football field. We have put a number in discussion with the school CFO of $25.5 million, which is an increase above the estimate that had been received. The reason for that increase is that there is an OPM requirement due to the cost of the building renovations project within that, as well as construction services agreements for the building project portions of that project, and that those in that estimate were not accounted for. So we've added just about $1.9 million to cover any of those potential costs. Total 27.9 for school capital. Recommendations, just over 39 million for the town, 27.9 for the school. Debt exclusions, Enterprise, from the enterprise fund being the sewer project and Island Home, $159 million, $226 million potential recommended funding for fiscal 27 out of the general fund. Next slide, please. Enterprise fund capital, 3.2 million from the airport that has gone through and been discussed and reviewed by the capital program committee. Next slide, please. The remaining enterprise fund capital, the 126 million for Island Home, which is the same number without any of the new bids, which are a long way from being ready today. That's the same number as was presented last year. $43.3 million for Somerset Needs Area. Supplemental funding for Surfside Treatment Facility, 9.2 million, which would be funded entirely, potentially through SRF program loans entirely within the sewer enterprise fund itself. And a pump station for sewer for South Shore Road and additional CMOM for stormwater, and water company did have a request for a truck. So 182 million in the enterprise fund capital. 185 million total between the airport and the remaining, with 159 million dollars of that potentially being debt exclusions and funded through the general fund. So all told, actual enterprise fund capital recommendations of just over $26 million. Next slide, please. Total capital potential for fiscal 27, the annual town meeting at 2026, 226.2 million in the general fund and 26 million in the enterprise funds, for a total of $252.3 million. Next slide, please. Proposed funding. And I do want to stress that as we work through this, some of this is subject to change and discussions, especially in the general revenue section at 4.2, as you recall in the previous presentation with the budget. The total through the raise and appropriate and other general revenues is actually $1.757 million. So we're going to still in the process of refining what gets recommended there. Borrowing within levy or in an enterprise fund, 17 million. Capital exclusion, 2,080,000. Debt exclusions, 205 million. Free cash, 8.1 million. And other revenue sources, 2.6, which we'll take you through in the next slide. And then retained earnings from various sources, 12.8 million. Next slide. Capital exclusion would potential 2,080,000 would potentially raise the tax bill for estimate for the average year-round home with the residential exemption, $66. Next slide, please. Items to be funded by the debt exclusions are listed here. Potentially town employee housing, the 7 million would add approximately just under $14 to the average estimated year-round valued home with the residential exemption. Seasonal housing phase 4, just $10.6. Tom Nevers, 15.8. Campus-wide improvements consisting of the track and the football field would add $50.37. Island Home, this is at $116 million, which is exactly the borrowing from last year that was on the annual town meeting warrant. It's actually taken out over 30 years, which is a reason for a little bit of the increase rather than the 25 to try to smooth that in and bring the payment down a little bit. It does, as we noted last week, does increase the interest cost. So that potentially would add $207.02 to the tax bill. Somerset Needs Area Sewer Extension construction is 43.3 million. It would add approximately $91.71 to the tax bill. If it was approved and it was all borrowed and actually in the tax rate this year, these are what we estimate those increases would have been. Next slide, please. You'll see the list of items to be funded by free cash here. Again, this is still a little bit of a work in progress because we do sometimes reduce some of these island-wide road improvements as we go through and discuss that, but that is the breakout for the $8.1 million that's being recommended. Next slide. This is the long list of potential items to be funded with general revenues. We still are in the process of working through this list with the town manager. Some of these may need to be moved out or we need to reconfigure the plan. There is $4.2 million and we have about $1.6 million to allocate. And we are, as I said, working through that as we speak. Proposed and potential items to be funded by borrowing as the list here: Tom Nevers roller hockey rink, sidewalk improvements, which we do consistently borrow within the levy limit in the annual program. the dredge implementation plan and maintenance plan, Surfside treatment facility, which would be funded by the enterprise fund, South Shore Road sewer pump station, which would be ultimately funded through the sewer enterprise fund, and CMOM mains and infrastructure would be funded through the stormwater fund, which ultimately is a general fund allocation. So all told there, so just $17.1 million. Next slide, please, Erica. Items to be funded with other sources, patrol boat replacement. We're reviewing whether we can fund this through the Waterways Improvement Fund. We would propose funding the Harbor Master Vehicle if we can through the Waterways Improvement Fund as well. Potential supplemental funding for the new Harbor Master building. I know that is either out to bid or going out to bid in the very near future. We're still working through a funding source, but that potentially is $1.5 million. So all told, for those other funding sources, $2,162,000. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. I think the next one is next steps. I think that just got slid around. We are in the process. I think most, if not all, the departments have officially gone to Capcom. I think today was the school went, and I think that might be the last department unless there's any questions. Early January, we'll have the final recommendation list, and then capital program committee report, I believe, in late January, early February. And then at that time, the select board and the finance committee will undertake a review and discussion of the capital program committee's recommendations.
Thanks, Brian. I think we might want to go to slide 14. That's the slide that shows the potential debt exclusions.
Just keep scrolling. Go back up the other way, Erica. Yep. Keep going. Keep going. Right there.
Right there. So we have reviewed all of these with you pretty much. And they're on here either because it's a board goal or it's a request from the school, or you've already agreed to put it before the voters. So I think we wanted to spend some maybe additional time on the items other than the island home. If you want to hear about them, definitely Somerset. And we do have a presentation on that too, as I mentioned earlier. And I think you definitely want to hear about the school project. And I'm not sure what else you want to hear about, but we're ready to review any of it with you. Maybe
Which do you want to do first?
Maybe school.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to answer some questions that you may have, but I'm going to explain a little bit about some recent developments that have occurred. My apologies. Beth Hallett, Superintendent of Schools. Yesterday at the school committee meeting of December 16th, the school committee voted in support of a change to the surfaces of the original plan that was proposed on September 22nd, 2025 for a new track and multi-use field that the surfaces were grass and asphalt, but with an outpouring of public support and much study in the area. It came to the school committee that there was a need to look carefully at the option of artificial turf, simply because with the amount of usage that we get from our field, particularly this one field used by football, but many other sports as well, there is not enough time that we can, not enough field time that will support the amount of need for our students and our sports. This field in particular gets an incredible amount of use, and it is getting to the point where it cannot be used. We have had officials tell us that it is not safe. We have had numerous issues around keeping the grass growing, and we did our best this summer to grow grass, and it was challenging because we had to move our football fall practice to a different field, which is very difficult when you don't have lines set up. So it is a challenge. But this project is not just a field. This project will finally allow our track and field teams to play and have meets on home turf, which is great. It will offer an opportunity also to the community. At some point, we would love to be able to open the track to allow for afternoon and evening usage by the community. In addition, very important is a complete overhaul of the bleacher and grandstand system. Currently, the system that we have in place is over 30 years old, and it is out of compliance. We are not in compliance with ADA expectations, and we have to make adjustments to that, and that is an additional cost. So that is something that's very important. We also have, as part of this project, a new booster building that would also house restrooms, because currently we do not have restrooms. We have porta potties, and it would include also a field house as well. So the project is not just the field, but also much more. And the numbers that you see here today include the recommendation by the school committee to change from grass field to artificial turf, and from an asphalt track to a polyurethane gel track. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And certainly Martin Engelov, CFO, can answer any monetary questions.
Are we going to take comments on this? I'd love to hear from the people who listened to the budget presentation.
Okay. If anyone would like to make a public comment, you're welcome to. Just state your name and please remove your hat.
Hi, my name is
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Eli McKeever. I played football here for 6 years at Vita Capizzo Stadium, and I've seen numerous injuries from teammates and friends as a result of the field conditions on grass. I support the athletic plan that the school committee approved last night, and they think it will create a safer environment for local athletes, as they will have a sustained field to play on. We should focus on the safety of our athletes, and the grass field cannot uphold that standard. I believe the community deserves a chance to vote on this at the annual town meeting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annie Ard. I'm a high school student. I'm here today to talk about accessibility. My father has a T4 spinal injury, which means he's paralyzed from the nipple line down, which has made participating in normal high school experiences incredibly hard for both of us. I'm a senior in high school and a cheerleader. And during my 4 years of high school, my father has had to go to excessive lengths to watch the top 1/4 of my head from the bleachers farthest away from the cheerleaders, because there's only one section for handicapped people, where there's a railing directly in their eye line. Now, my dad drives down the track and asks for forgiveness rather than permission, but other handicapped people don't or can't go to those lengths. They park in the designated handicap spots and have to go down the hill to the field, which is incredibly steep and an almost 100% guaranteed fall. If you do somehow manage to survive the hill, then you have to face wheeling down the gravel and dirt, which is very rough and resistant against wheelchairs. During my senior game, my father was told to wheel down the field, which is an arduous task alone, but being told to move inch by inch every few seconds is like moving against a current. It's something not able-bodied people think about. I'm here to express the need for new facilities, not only for the clear need of our student athletes, but also for our spectators who are often overlooked. Our current facilities prohibit most from attending and experiencing essential events. Being disabled is hard enough, and I'm just a part of one family. We need a solution for our whole community so that no one else has to face the possibility of not having their parents watch their games. I support the athletic plan that the school committee has approved last night, and the community deserves a chance to vote at this at the annual town council meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madden Myers, and I also support the plan that the school committee approved last night and thinks the community deserves a chance to vote. As the varsity soccer goalie, I've taken my fair share of beatings, but not by my opponents, by the field. The grass fields can be extremely hard to play on, especially in the winter when they start to freeze over. It can lead to numerous injuries. I have these essays that I can pass out and you can read after or during. I don't mind. About my numerous friends and teammates who've gotten pretty badly injured, season ending, just because of field conditions, not even relating to other teammates. We think that the student athletes should be supported with the right facilities and state-of-the-art technology in order to create a safer outdoor sport environment. And that's all. We think that also it's important this decision happens sooner rather than later due to the inaccessibility and the injuries are getting worse every year. It's a possibility that my grandparents can't even watch my graduation due to the inaccessibility to handicap. That's all.
Thank you. You're welcome to bring those up if you want.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us the time to speak. Last night, the school committee approved a plan that responds to the school's real and growing needs.
Sorry, can you just state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Graham Veazey. So last night, the school committee approved a plan that responds to the school's real and growing needs, not just for athletics, but for safety, access, and long-term care of our facilities. I know there is a full warrant ahead of 2026, but I also know there are serious and ongoing issues with the NPS fields and grandstands. This project was developed out of necessity, paused for understandable concerns, and then revisited. 3 years later, the reality is nothing has changed on the ground or in the stands. We need to come together as a community and agree that our students and facilities must be safe and reliable. Continued delay only means continued problems and at a higher cost. Coaches and visiting teams continue to raise concerns about field conditions. The grandstands remain out of ADA compliance, and our track team still has to leave the island for home meets. And our students are left feeling disappointed by facilities that represent their schools and their town. Doing nothing also carries a real risk. When known safety issues go unaddressed, communities expose themselves to outcomes none of us want. A simple review of Manny Garcia case in Newport Mesa United School District versus them shows that a delaying needed repairs can have serious consequences, both for students' health and the school district. Responsible stewardship means acting before a preventable problem becomes a crisis. If we move forward, this becomes more than a field. It becomes a place where the community gathers to cheer on the Whalers and where neighbors walk the track, connect, and belong. At its core, this is about safety, responsibility, and community. And I respectfully ask that this plan be placed on the 2026 town warrant so the community can weigh in, just as the school committee has done. Thank you for your time.
As we're discussing this, can you timeline out when the OPM will be hired, the final bid numbers will be in hand, and then when this project would commence and when it would be completed? And then my other question is any opportunities for phasing that wouldn't be horribly disruptive to getting the main pieces done?
Am I answering first?
Could you answer those so we can just kind of frame the discussion a little bit? Because I don't know. I mean, the board can come back and discuss the merits, but I think we're considering what the school committee has already recommended. You don't have to convince us that that's already coming to us as a package. So I think we need to make some decisions about how this timeline's out and when it goes to a vote and when it's officially ready to go for a vote. Am I making sense? We don't have a final number in hand. We don't have an OPM. We need this to be ready for prime time and outreach. So could you?
Martin Angelov, CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Nantucket Public Schools. So we are in the process right now of getting the approval. As you know, we presented the project originally with an asphalt track and a grass field. That has changed, discussion, which was welcome. So we've had input from the community and we've changed that. What we've received so far is price proposals or price estimates. We don't have a final number, no. We do have an assumption in the total amount for an OPM that myself and the finance director of the town, Brian Turbid, discussed. And we are ready. If this project, once approved yesterday, we are ready to move towards bidding for an OPM. As was shared today with the Capital Program Committee, we believe that we can go out to bid in about 3 months and we can have a number by April 15th. So those are the estimates of timelines that we have as of today. This has been an evolving project, so we didn't want to reach out and do additional work before it was finalized as to what services, because that was the main topic of discussion up to now.
And when would the project commence if it was approved in the spring?
If it was approved in the spring, our expectation is it's going to commence immediately after school is finished.
Yep. June 8th.
I mean,
June 17th.
We don't know. I honestly don't know what it's a big project. So I do admit that that's our expectation or hope, maybe is the right word. But if the project is approved, we would like to move immediately. So that would be up to what bids.
You can't ask questions from the audience. You have to be at a mic because we can't identify you and you have to go through me. But if you'd like to come to the mic and ask those questions, you can.
My name is Corey Gamble. My question is, can it go through town meeting, even though there's not a number until April?
I would think so. Well, our thinking is if there is a number before town meeting, that number can be adjusted on the town meeting floor. We have this happen every year. We have technical amendments. So we could have a final number for the voters to look at when they're voting, yes.
Okay. If anyone else would like to speak really specifically about timing, not about the scope of the project, because the school committee has already brought that to us. Erica?
Hi, Erica Mooney. I have a senior athlete at home, and we have been really lucky that she's been able to have so many opportunities to play off island at some really excellent facilities. I know this doesn't really answer your question, but in terms of timing, I know that she's graduating this year and won't be able to see what comes out of this, but there are so many kids that play sports, and I'm so thankful that they have those opportunities because kids who play sports are just so focused and passionate about what they do. So I would hope that this would start as soon as possible. And I don't know if this is what you meant by phasing, but I would hope that this whole project is phase 1, because the football field is one sport. And I know it's a multi-use field, but we also have a field hockey field where one of the starting seniors was injured during her senior game because there was a hole in the field. There are issues with all the fields, and our kids are at a real disservice and are behind so many other teams in terms of capability and skills, because when they go off island and have never played on a turf field before, they don't even know what to do. I mean, it's a completely different animal when you are playing soccer or field hockey, and it's such a faster sport. So again, I am fully supporting this project the way that the school committee recommended it last night. And I do hope this is phase 1 of a continual project to improve all the fields within our schools. Thank you.
Do any other board members have questions?
I'll just make a comment. Timing is not often ideal. But the schools and these kids have been waiting a really long time on this project. And so I'm inclined to take the risk of waiting for numbers in April because this has been a long time coming.
Go ahead.
Hi,
And
Madam
then
Chair.
there's someone
Matt Laurel
behind
for the
you.
record. I've been following this since I was on the original committee, Beth. What are you doing here? And I just want to just roll back a little bit. When we built the high school in 1989, there was a big movement to ban the swimming pool. I don't know how many people remember that in this room, maybe 2, 3. Maybe Matt definitely does, but and then we had Nantucket Ice, the miracle of building that facility. We used to fly to the vineyard to play hockey. Cessnas. I mean, this is like 5 minutes ago. Okay. So what Erica brought up is actually on my little sheet of paper here that I wrote down. Everything off island is better than Nantucket. But when we're mentioned in the news, even a brawl is a ritzy brawl. Right? It's a ritzy brawl. Excellent. So we are looked at as wealthy, and that's just happened by itself. But like we got the crappiest fields in the entire area. We should have not necessarily the nicest, but this should have happened years ago, and it just didn't. So, and the other thing that I want to mention is the intermediate school article did not get called for town meeting. So I'm not concerned about this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Garrett. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Select Board. I did have something prepared, but with the comments, I'm going to kind of go off the cuff a little bit, just not repeat things you've already been hearing. Just to kind of echo some things, this project has been in development since 2013, and the hope was to originally come before town in 2022. That got kiboshed. I think what's been exceptional throughout this new process since September is that the student voices have been clear and courageous. More than 300 students at the high school signed a student-led petition advocating for safe, functional athletic facilities, and many students bravely spoke publicly to share their experiences and concerns. The 300 signatures was collected within a 2-day period, a 1-day period. Thank you. Their advocacy reflects a strong desire to be part of a solution that benefits the entire Nantucket community, and their voices deserve to be acknowledged and respected. From a personal experience as a JV girls soccer coach, before games and practices, my players regularly reminded one another to be careful of the side of the field that borders the old softball field because it's completely uneven. That should never be a concern before stepping onto a field for an adolescent player. Going into a game thinking about getting hurt is just not acceptable, and they had real reasons to worry. I am a very mindful coach. I'm also a nurse in the ER, so before every practice and game, I go ahead and line every hole that I see with a cone. Not every coach is out there doing that. The girls are so sweet. They pick up stuff. And I always say, wait, no, not those cones. Don't pick up those cones because that's where you could potentially blow out your knee or break an ankle. So leave those cones. Those are, to be forewarned for injury. That's really not the standard we should accept for our student athletes on this island. So placing this article on the 2026 warrant would give the community the opportunity to review, discuss, and decide on a long planned project intended to improve safety, access, and the overall experience for players, coaches, students, parents, and spectators alike. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I do have one hand up online. Michael Sarin, I think. It is? Okay. Okay, don't let him in. Let's go to Corey Gamble.
Corey Gamble, lacrosse coach, but this is a question. I love what everyone said. The original proposal back in 2021, if I'm correct, was for 2 turf fields, one on the field hockey and one on the stadium. What I don't know what's clear right now, the one that's been put forward by the school committee, is that for the 2 fields? Because it was supposed to be a mirror image, I think, of the 2021 project.
No, it is not. It has changed. So we do not have that additional field. It is for one field only, and that would be the field that currently has the football field.
No, the
where
lacrosse
turf-
field, right?
Oh, yeah, football lacrosse. Yes, of
I'm
course.
having fun. But so that's a change from because the original 21 project, which I thought this was supposed to mirror, was for both.
That
But
is
that
correct.
part got taken away, the field hockey field.
That is correct.
Would that ever be considered to get back in on this one, or is that too much and needs to go towards a phase 2?
I believe that it would go towards phase 2. It would be an additional cost.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I kind of think about this very similar to what happened last week with our Island Home, which was a sizable slice of the community said that they wanted a chance to vote on it. And I think that by testament to all the students and parents, I don't think you wanted to sit through a budget presentation tonight, but we appreciate you coming to listen. And I think this needs to go to the voters and to be considered by the whole town because it's important for the students and the community alike.
Thank you, Vince Murphy. And I guess at this particular juncture, I'm in representing school committee of sorts. And I just kind of want to further support what Tom is saying. In numbers, it's what I like best in this world. It's true. There's truth in numbers. There's no lies in numbers. I just want to say that through the 4 public comment sessions that we had 44 public comments. And in the same period of time, we had 29 letters. If you add them all up, put them into the simple categories, pro turf, pro grass, and other, and then put it into percentages, because it's easiest, it's 62% that was requesting turf, 15% only representing grass, and 23% had other comments about other aspects of the project. It was another fact that many of the letters that we received had multiple signatories. There was one letter, pro turf, 138 signatures. Another letter, pro turf, 59 signatures. And a letter pro grass, 29 signatures. The overwhelming weight of requests went in one direction. I just wanted to make that point so that you can consider that and use that as some data in decision making, as we did at school committee. Thank you.
And in your other hat as sustainability coordinator, you're in support of this.
There's a number of elements that were really interesting in this. We were asked to look at the science by multiple people. There was a lot of chemical questions. We had those very substantially resolved by experts. Their PFAS issue is non-existent. There's other elements about microplastics, but we have a very good capture system. Everything is resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Justin.
Hi, my name is Justin Quinn, and I just want you, when you look out here, these kids, all these kids represent taxpayers, or they are taxpayers, and over time, they will be paying more tax than anybody else that's paying tax today. So please look at them as, you know, they are the future, and they're the future taxpayers.
We have a hand up online. Megan Perry.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask a quick question or clarification. Was information provided by experts in the subject matter, or was it provided by paid consultants of the industry or who have a financial gain in saying that artificial turf is PFAS free, because I've yet to see a product that is actually PFAS free. So I think listening to experts and listening to consultants is very, very different. Additionally, I'd be curious to see, of the signatures that Vince just mentioned, how many of those signatures are registered voters for the town of Nantucket. So thank you very much.
I might through the chair. We contracted with Weston and Sampson, which is an independent environmental company that there were 2 scientists that worked with us. One was a toxicologist, one was a lead scientist on projects, and both of whom have no connection to the turf industry. They are meant to be impartial, meant to be independent. And that was what was requested of the school committee to the schools. And so that's what we did, is we found an independent company to use.
Thank you. Do you know the answer to the other question about the signatures and whether they're voters?
I do not.
Okay, that's fine.
So thank you.
Thanks. Just state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Madison Massey, and I'm not sure if I'm following the rules, but I'm just going to speak anyways. I was on the JV girls soccer team this past season, and I will be entering the Nantucket High School in the fall. I feel very strongly that the turf field is the right decision for our community. After spending the past season practicing and playing on the NES fields, I've been able to experience the field conditions firsthand. Seeing players injured due to these awful fields is unacceptable. The grass fields that we are currently playing on cannot handle the amount of usage that they are getting. Turf is a much more durable option. I feel as if we go with the grass option, we will be right back here having the same meeting in 5 years and having wasted $20 million. Please do what is best for our student athletes and push forward the turf option, which will provide a safer and more reliable playing conditions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have a slight answer to the question about the signatures.
Sure.
Throughout the high school, me and a few of my friends, like captains of sports teams, led the 300 student signatures. And although not all of them are eligible voters, but I believe once we hit a certain age, we could. It's the actual experienced athletes who have the credibility of playing on these fields and who are the future of these fields. It's the local kids who will grow up to hopefully stay on this island and be the future of this island. It's the locals who matter. It's the kids who use these fields every single day. And that's why those 300 signatures are so important. And if we create safer and advanced playing fields, it's a lot more likely that these locals will want to stay here and raise their kids on these fields so that they too can be successful athletes, because otherwise they'll leave and the future of Nantucket is just a summer paradise. There'll be no one here for the rest of the months. So that's all.
Thank you. I have another hand up online, Charity Benz.
Thank you. I have been listening to this entire discussion, and I've read a lot of the concerns about people, young people tripping on potholes or holes in the surface of the playing fields. I just have to ask the question, are these fields not inspected? And, you know, it takes some dirt and you throw the dirt in the hole instead of covering it with a cone. I mean, this is something I find very difficult to understand. And the solution is to spend tens of millions of dollars to correct these problems. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chip Clooney, Director of Facilities for the schools. There are no specific inspections for the school, for the fields. We have a grounds crew that does everything they can to keep things going as best they can. And currently that is what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Graham Veazey here. I just want to clarify the letter with 140 is made up of year-round residents, to answer your question.
Thank you very much. And obviously student signatures, unless they're 18 years old, they are not voters yet.
To clarify the question about the ground maintenance, they do a wonderful job. They do everything they can, but it's just impossible to keep up with the amount of practice hours and the amount like the duration of time that kids are using these fields. For example, the soccer field, they had, obviously the goalies are just going back and forth on the same small patch. So it was impossible to keep grass alive right there. So they had taken dirt and filled up the patch, and they say they didn't tamper pat it, but I think they did, because I dove on that hard like surface with no friction, no nothing. I was just diving on rocks because I am the varsity soccer captain and goalie. I was diving on rocks, diving on the dirt patches, and I actually dislocated my thumb just sliding against the ground because there was no friction, and the ground is so hard that I've had to calculate how to not knock the wind out of myself due to the inability to keep grass in those sections.
Thank you.
Kate Garrett again. Charity, thank you for your question. I think it's great to ask questions because it helps get a better understanding. As a mother of two, I work also as a RN in the emergency department here. I wish I had time to fill all the holes that I see. Putting cones down is the best I can do to keep the athletes and players safe so they don't have to suffer any injuries on my time. That would crush me. I don't have a landscaping truck. I don't have a shovel handy. It's enough for me in my very busy day to get to practice and run a 2-hour session for these girls and also travel off island as well as host games on island. The school is doing the best they can with the resources and manpower they have. That's why this is so important, because the usage is so incredibly high. We have 70% of Nantucket students playing sports, which is a huge number. I think the state average is 39%. That should be celebrated. It keeps kids off screens. It keeps kids out of their bedrooms and behind closed doors. It keeps team camaraderie up. We are in a sludge of mental health right now for adolescents. It keeps them healthy and mentally healthy. We all have to play a part in that. So it's not just as easy to cover those holes with dirt. We just don't have the manpower or the resources to do that, which is why we need the turf field to take usage off of the other grass fields. We need relief from that. Thank you.
And just to be clear, this is not this is a turf field where the current football/lacrosse field is. This is a proper track so that track and field can be hosted on Nantucket. This is a replacement of the Boosters Club concession stand, including real handicap accessible bathrooms. This is an entire replacement of all of the bleachers and the sports box and making that all handicap accessible, as well as the field house, which actually has to be relocated as well because the track is wider than what the current dirt track is. So there's a lot more to it. One more comment.
Yeah, I can also further the ability of the maintenance to help. Every single year during lacrosse season, I also play lacrosse on Nantucket. They try to seed the field and grow grass, but preseason starts early. If we want to keep getting to round 8 of the championships, if we want to keep winning state tournaments as the boys did, we have to start early. We have to play hard. And when our preseason starts, we try to play on the fields we are meant to, and we pick up the seeds every ground ball, and it can no longer grow new grass. And it's also a matter of weather. Living in the middle of an island or the middle of the ocean on an island, the weather is hard, the storms are heavy, and every single day when it rains, that's when most of the holes are created due to kids pivoting or just sliding across the field in the mud. But if we had a turf field, not only would we be able to play in these rainy conditions, but it would prevent further holes as our fields do right now. And also living on an island, it can be extremely frustrating as an athlete to have so many boat cancellations. And with the weather issues in the grass fields, it's actually a lot worse, because for soccer, we could just play through the rain, just have our game on the turf. It won't ruin the field. We won't get hurt. But for sports like lacrosse, they can't. We have to postpone our games. And then usually the last 2 weeks of our season, when we should be practicing for playoffs, we're unable to because we have multiple rescheduled games in a row, 5 games a week. because the weather prevented us from playing and the boat cancellations prevented us from playing. But if we had turf fields, the weather would be a lot less of an issue and wouldn't lead to the holes that the maintenance has to deal with.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've got it. In terms of the school, we have some difficult decisions with overloading the warrant, as was mentioned at the beginning, with things that are going to add to the tax bill. We do have a nice chart that I added it up. If we put all the debt exclusions on, the average tax bill with a residential exemption would go up less than $400, $389. But that's just the average tax bill with residential exemption, which is not everybody. I'm, as a board, inclined to say we've put the seniors and the kids aside for a number of years. Let's do those two and delay the sewer and maybe delay a couple of other things. But that's, and just to be clear, all of these debt exclusions will require not only a town meeting vote, they will require over 50% vote at the ballot. So there's two steps.
2/3 at town meeting.
Yes.
Yes, 2/3 at town meeting.
Sorry.
50% at the ballot.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd love to hear the summary about the sewer, about Somerset.
Yes, before I make a decision.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, just one clarification. I think that maybe some folks in the community were or are under the impression that since OA Around Home passed the ballot before, that it doesn't need another. But I understand, and we sort of talked about this last week, that it needs a new because of the time frame. Okay, just so everyone's aware of that,
We want it to for sure to have another vote to be safe, that it all goes through and not have any hiccups.
Madam Chair,
Yes, John.
if I may, this might be more appropriate for later when you deal with the warrant articles, but I have been looking at some options for scheduling the ballot question for our island home, or possibly not having to do that depending upon how the bid numbers come in. And I was prepared later on in this meeting to address that issue specifically.
Okay. Sewer.
So we weren't planning to give the whole sewer presentation over again, but we did want to point out a few things. So Dan or Kent is. Okay, Dan, we're ready for you.
Are you ready? Okay. Thanks for having us back. I guess there was a little bit of confusion on the SRF timelines. So I guess let me spend a little bit of time here trying to clarify. So for the 2026 SRF schedule, the project evaluation form was the first step in the process. We completed that in July of 25. So we're waiting for the draft intended use plan to come out, and we're expecting that in early 2026. Last year, the draft IUP was released on January 30th, and then the final IUP was released on April 8th. So both of those would be prior to the annual town meeting. So then the next step would be the local appropriation requirement. So it has to be completed by June 30th of 2026. So this would have to be happening at the May annual town meeting. So if the town decides not to put the sewer project on the agenda, and you make the IUP, which means you're going to get SRF funding for the project, DEP will pull the funding and give it to the next project on the list below the intended use plan. And you will not be able to get funding from SRF until the following year. And we'd have to reapply in July of 2026 if the town wants to go into 2027. So if you do appropriate the money in June, or at the May town meeting rather, the next application process is a two-part process, would be the SRF application itself. At that point in time, we submit the final design plans and specifications along with a very large application form that goes to DEP and the Clean Water Trust. As part of that application, there's a section on the 0% financing for nutrient removal projects. So we have to justify in the application as to why the town deserves to get 0%. And as we discussed last week, we've had like 3 or 4 projects recently where the town's gotten the 0% financing. And Somerset would be one of those projects that's eligible for it if the DEP decides to continue that process, that 0% financing option. We don't know if that's going to happen this year, and we don't even know if it will happen the following. That's a gamble that the town would have to take. So like it says, the little bullets here. So once the IUP is issued, we get an understanding whether or not the town would get SRF funding. And then after the end of the application process, that's when DEP advises on 0% financing. So on the last project for Surfside Road, we found out in January of 2021, after we submitted the SRF application in the prior October, that the town got funding. So that's when you'd expect to hear back on 0%. So before we move on, do you
One question.
Okay, so this is how I understood it, and I want to repeat it so I'm clear. The IUP will be issued. So if we put this on the warrant, and we don't make the IUP, we could amend the motion to not to adopt, right? So if we weren't eligible for the low cost funding, we could basically, in essence, ask town meeting to not pass it, right? Intentionally, right? If we do make the IUP, can we make the authorization contingent on getting the 0% if it becomes available? Like, so in other words, we would say we would do it if we get 0, but not do it if we made the IUP, we're going to get something, right? But we don't know whether it's 0 or 2. So am I making sense? Can we make the authorization contingent on qualifying for the 0?
That, I don't know if DEP would allow that to happen. We could check with them and get back to you.
But
If I may,
you could actually just not proceed with the funding, go back again next year. You could opt to not proceed.
Okay, just
You
not.
are not under, you are, if you make the IUP and you vote the funding, you are not under an obligation to proceed immediately. You can still defer.
And follow up, who would make the decision not to move forward? And that's probably a town council question.
if I may, Madam Chair, I would not recommend adding that kind of a contingency to the town meeting vote, because that's not something that is statutorily authorized. You can make an appropriation contingent on a debt exclusion, of course. But I think DOR, in addition to potentially DEP, might look askance at that kind of a contingency. So that's my first point. My second point is, it would be up to the sewer commissioners, which are the select board, to decide whether to proceed with the project, assuming you get the appropriation and you make the intended use plan. If the financial terms are not satisfactory or pose too much risk to the town, based upon the percentage of the interest rate, the select board could simply not proceed with the project.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, but that doesn't help. If the goal is to sort of only proceed if we're getting great funding, that doesn't really help us in bringing the $200+ million number down. So that's that's where I struggle on this.
I agree, but I just wanted to know, I mean, I just wanted to know what our options are and what, try to anticipate some questions that might come from the community in this.
We could be waffling all over this again. Did you bring your waffle maker?
So,
Well-
Brooke, I can add just one more piece of information for you on the,
Oh, yes, and Malcolm McNabb has his hand up.
okay.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I wish Matt could repeat what he said closer to the microphone. I missed that. I'm sorry I'm not there, but I have no choice.
Oh. Sorry, Malcolm. Which part? At the beginning, I mentioned that it doesn't really help us if we don't know until, after, right before town meeting or after town meeting, because we're talking about positioning these for the chance for the most to pass. And so that's where the trouble is. Then I made a joke about waffling because the paper was telling us we were waffling. So that wasn't very meaningful.
I will reserve my comment for later.
Okay, thanks. Dan, did you want to add anything?
I was going to address Brooke's question too. So, the next deadline we have for the application in October. Again, if you don't meet that deadline, then DEP will pull the funding. And then the final deadline is June 30th of the following year, where construction contracts have to be signed. And again, if the town does not move forward with contracts by then, and you say we're not going to move forward with it, DEP will just take the funding away at that point in time. So you're not obligated to move forward just because you submit the application. That wouldn't come until you actually start signing the paperwork with the Clean Water Trust, which, by then you folks would know whether or not you really want to move forward. But you will know, but prior to town meeting, whether or not you even have the funding from DEP on the IUP. Like you said, you can at that point you can pull it off and take the $43 million off the total 200.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense if we're going to put it on the warrant and the voters vote for it. I can't imagine not doing it. I was just curious what the options were. And then obviously then we'd be going another year.
Yeah, but
because of the funding cycle.
There's a little more information that we gathered as a result of your meeting last week that I think is in some further slides about how to potentially reduce the debt exclusion number. Dan, if we want to continue.
So, happy to move to the next slide. So just real quick, what we did here is we broke the numbers up for you folks so you understand out of the 43 million, a breakdown between sewer, water, and then the raceway drive, drainage, and roadway. And then under the sewer project of the 36.8 million for SRF, we broke it down in the main components. And the reason for doing this is we wanted to show you like surface restoration and how much paving cost is. So it's not only just the sewer work that's being done, but all the paving of the roadways following up. And then we also want to show you that the budget includes a 20% contingency fund right now, which is fairly high. So right now the sewer contingency is $5 million. So once we get progressed through design, that contingency will drop down to 10%. And then once we bid the job, that drops down to 5%. So we just wanted to kind of explain some of the number breakdown for you folks. So then in the next slide, we'll start moving forward with the.
So what we thought would be helpful would be to go back and talk a little bit about Shimo project, which is the last major sewer extension project the town did. This was a question that has come up a couple of times. What happened there? And this talks mostly to the decision about whether or not you would do betterments for the project. Prior to the Shimo project going to town meeting, Shimo and Plus areas, in 2016, the Board of Selectmen had a joint meeting with the FinCom. That meeting resulted in a recommendation to do 25% betterments for the project. That was the recommendation that was taken to the floor of town meeting. Town meeting at that time took action to actually reject that recommendation. It was amended on the floor to remove the requirement to do betterments, keep it on the tax base, which was fairly unique action, but it was very clear at the time the town meeting took that action. So essentially, what ended up happening was there were no betterments on the project. The important part that we wanted to mention here, though, is there were a number of fees in place at the time that the town was assessing for various folks connecting to the sewer system. These would be normally completely separate from the betterment process. And in fact, one of these was a privilege fee. It would have been assessed when a betterment was not used. But in this case, because no betterments were used, the one thing that did happen was we looked at those fees that had been kind of formed on the island. And we said, well, instead of using what was previously termed the capacity utilization fee and the separate sewer privilege fee, we came up with a new sewer capacity fee. And this was brought forth before the board at the time, talked about fairly extensively and adopted as a new single sewer capacity fee. And the reason we think this is relevant for your information is because it is important to note that the folks served directly by the project do in fact pay a significant amount of cost related to this. At the time SHMO was done, that fee was leveled to be equivalent to what had been the old sewer capacity utilization fee. However, it was probably a little bit low at the time, but that's what was adopted. Equivalently, the amount of money collected from those fees on the properties served by the project would be on the order of about 15% of the total project. It's probably a little bit low. So not really the same as when you would have done a betterment, but at least it reflects that you were collecting some significant costs, share of the costs from the properties served. Those costs also are a little bit different because they do intentionally also pay for some downstream improvements, but it is money that you would collect through the sewer capacity fee directly from the served properties. And that's what we wanted to kind of talk about going forward a little bit. So Erica, if you want to flip to the next slide. Essentially leveling up the Somerset needs area to the discussion that we've had for the SHMO area that was previously done. You end up with a number of options to recover some of the costs for the project and to generate revenue, particularly from the properties that are served directly by the project. The first one is you could do it like SHMO was done. Assess only a sewer capacity fee. You know, look back at what was decided by town meeting previously, stick with that and say, look, we'll do no betterments, we'll do sewer capacity fee only. If you were to do that, our recommendation has been standing that that fee should be adjusted for at least the time value of money, and it would probably go up significantly. We'll talk about that a little bit more. The second thing you could do is the original vision to do betterments does not necessarily exclude the use of the sewer capacity fee. So you could actually set some betterment and still charge a sewer capacity fee using those combination of fees to generate revenue. And then the third thing is you could actually do betterments and opt to waive the capacity fee.
Oh, Matt has a question.
I'll wait till he's done.
Go ahead.
So I'm just asking, if we were to use a sewer capacity fee, the goal was that existing people keep it low for existing houses that aren't changing and aren't going to add appreciably more hardscaping and more runoff and everything else to the system. But we wanted to increase it on houses that put lots that put 2 or 3 houses on the lot, or that, do a lot more impact. Is there a way for us to vote and tier it in that manner?
So, and that's, Matt, that's actually something that came up. I think we were on the board when we did the sewer capacity fee adoption. That's actually something we designed into the sewer capacity fee. It's actually scaled by the nature of the property use. It's limited right now. It basically sets that everybody pays as if it's a 3-bedroom home, but anyone building a larger home, a second unit, a tertiary unit, including things such as a lot of excess bathrooms, even if you don't have excess bedrooms. Those things all scale the amount of the sewer capacity fee up, so those properties would pay a larger proportionate share under that fee system. And that's existing. You have that on the books right now, and it's a system that we've been using when people are doing extensions privately to your sewer system. That sewer capacity fee sits there. The only thing that, as I mentioned, that I think needs to be done is it does need to be incremented a little bit time-wise. But I think Matt, it meets the intent of what you just stated because it's already made the scale to the size of the use of sewer for that property.
Yep. Brooke has a question?
So, and this maybe Brian may be able to help the finance director. Betterment is paid out over time on your tax bill, correct? As opposed to a sewer capacity fee, which is due at the time of hookup. So in a way, it's a less of an imposition on homeowners.
When we built the sewer capacity fee system, Brooke, we actually built in the ability to apportion it over time, very similar.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you've actually got this similar levels of flexibility, and that was done with a lot of forethought that it was still a significant amount of money for some folks.
Yeah.
When we charge these fees. So it was pretty well thought out. Yeah.
The capacity fee can be paid over time,
It
can't
can be
it?
apportioned of
Right.
the 20 years, yes, just like a betterment would be able to do.
Yeah, Brian, you have a comment?
No, I'm
Oh.
was answering that, so.
If we are going to allocate a greater portion of this, the cost of this project to the homeowners who will directly benefit, right? Just making sure it's payable over time so that we're not forcing someone to sell their house because they literally can't afford to hook up. And remind me, what's the required timeline for having to hook up when sewer comes to your neighborhood?
I think it's 2 years.
Yeah.
If you're in a nitrogen sensitive area or always.
It's 2 years once the sewer becomes available in front of your property.
Thank you, David. And also, if you have installed a new septic system within a certain period of time, there is an opportunity for an extension through the Board of Health, correct?
There is a option, especially for the IA systems, of up to 15 years for IAs. The one issue that we did do with the Shimo project is because we didn't have 200 installers, there was some flexibility in that 2 years. That was all based on discussions with the Board of Health. So some of those periods were up to 3 years that you had to connect, but that was because we didn't have enough installers.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just when we talk about betterments, there are really a couple of ways to make assessments. One is you assess a betterment, and that has to be paid by every person who is able to connect to the sewer, and it's assessed at the time that the costs are incurred by the town. And you can actually assess a preliminary benefit of betterment of 50% of the cost before you actually start construction. The other option, and I believe you've done this in the past, is to assess privilege fees as the method of assessment. And that is not paid until you actually connect to the sewer system.
John, just to clarify, I just want to let's give a quick clarification on that. When the board adopted the sewer capacity fee, the decision was made that would replace the old capacity utilization fee and the sewer privilege fee. So the sewer capacity fee took the place of the privilege fee.
Okay. So,
John, you can go.
No, that's okay. I wasn't aware of that fact.
I'm fine. I'm fine. If we see some examples on the sewer capacity, I'm fine with that rather than doing the betterment route. But I think we want to have looked at it at some examples and make sure. And then I think there are other questions besides just paying for this that I think we want to have addressed at some point, such as if we do this, what's the impact going to be? I think the numbers that were shared tonight was 400 homes for 40 million. What's, $1 million, what was that, $1 million a home or something? whatever it was a lot of money. And so there's not, but the other issues are, if we're adding more hardscaping, if we're doing more build out, what is the impact on these areas that we think that we're saving? You know, and I think that that's been an open question for a while. And I think that we're putting, some of these areas, we're putting more pressure onto the wetlands and onto these areas. And it might, maybe we do all right with nitrogen, but there are a lot of other pollutants that are being increased and are making it worse. And so I want to make sure that we don't do this and then find out that, you know, now we've got a tertiary dwellings, and we've got the primary ADU, and we've got this, that, and the other, and the 400 lots becomes 1,200 homes. And, you know, and so I think there's things like that that still need some analysis before we sort of pull the trigger on it.
Okay, can I just jump in on that just a tad? And Dan and Ken can speak to this as well. We discussed this last week when we were going over what to bring back before the board. And there is a build out analysis that Weston and Sampson did for this project, which is fairly recently updated. However, I don't think there's an immediate time frame in which the information that you're asking for, Matt, would be able to be provided, because there is no way to know what increase in impervious surfaces there may be, or what increase in dwellings people might decide to put on their property because they now are able to connect to sewer, and there might be restriction. It would be a very in-depth, detailed property by property analysis, at least as we discussed it internally, in order to get that information. But you guys could speak further to that.
Libby, I think there's two things maybe we can offer here. One is, there are a lot of issues here that are pretty big. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to do a kind of more of a workshop on the sewer issues in general, sewer planning in general. I would say that the number of units we've planned for, as to the capacity of the system and what we've planned for, the number of units we have planned for now and have been, you know, circulating in the presentation that was given last week in discussion, includes a reasonable expectation for changes on the properties, additional units being built and properties that are vacant. And so that is what we would not call that a build out. A build out is traditionally a build out analysis would give you a maximum amount of units that could be built in an area. And so in this case, what we've done is what we feel is a reasonable projection of what we would expect potential expansion to be, so that we can adequately size things. And it's based significantly on our experience, also what we would normally see.
Erica, can you mute Carl's?
So we do have that information. Like I said, I think that led to the number of units that we projected last week. I think if you're going to have a conversation about build out, you should have a very clear discussion about, you know, the range that you're going to see, because it is very hard to predict what might happen in the future. We generally want to be very much aware of what the flows from the area would be, what the unit count would be, and use reasonable numbers to depict what we think that would then give us for the number of units to say, spread the cost of the project for this discussion. And I'm hoping that's helpful.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I do just want to remind everybody, when we're talking about the sewer capacity fee, when we sunsetted the privilege fee, which was originally instituted with the $45 million upgrade to the Surfside wastewater treatment facility, with 1/3 being paid by the tax base, 1/3 within the sewer rate itself, and 1/3 paid by the privilege fee. That was actually limited to, I think it was 1,273 properties. And once we hit that, we could not recover it anymore, which is why we created this sewer capacity fee. But the primary driver of the sewer capacity fee was designed, as we're receiving it, to pay for the upgrades to the sewer treatment facility itself. So if we are going to consider a cost recovery system in a manner that rededicates some of that to some other project, maybe Somerset needs or whatever, however we're doing that, we're going to have to, then that will impact the rate itself. And the plan with this sewer capacity fee was always designed to help fund the necessary improvements as we extended sewer to the treatment facility itself. So I think that there's a broader discussion if we're going to do that about what that fee was designed to do. And I do agree with Weston and Sampson and Ken, and we've had this discussion that we do, as part of the proposal that we bring forward to the board to consider for rate increases, potentially for sewer for fiscal 27, as we had, when you adopted the last ones, this discussion would be part of that as well. So I just want to give a little bit more clarity to what the privilege fee did and how this came to be. So.
Thank you.
Tim, you have any other questions?
We did have one more slide if we want to go to that.
Okay.
And this is just, you know, subjective, but this is kind of the discussion of, okay, if you did want to do, even if you did betterments, you do this kind of an analysis, but for the sake of discussion, we wanted to talk a little bit about the potential revenue generation that could come from running sewer with a new number, and respectful of what Brian said, because that everything he said is absolutely true. But if we do extend sewers to this area, you'll have access to the properties that get served paying sewer capacity fee. If you don't extend sewers, that capacity fee doesn't come back. So there is some, you know, additional revenue that you see from this, especially if we look at incrementing. The sewer capacity fee, as I noted, was set to be equivalent to the old capacity utilization fee. As far as I can see, that original decision dated back to circa 2008, even though we did not increment it in 2016 to 2018-19 when we finished SHMO. That fee is probably overdue to be adjusted upward. That 2032 is pretty low in comparison to other sewer capacity fees that we've worked on for other communities in the Commonwealth. Your costs aren't lower, they tend to actually be higher, so I would normally expect your costs would be a little more significant on a gallon basis. So for the sake of discussion, if you look at the two right-hand blocks, if it was, you know, established, you know, many years ago, more than 10 years ago, let's say, 2032 per gallon probably needs to go up quite a bit. I think as a reasonable number, even if we just use the incremented value of construction costs over that period of time, we run that number to be something in the high 30s as a minimum. So we've thrown out a number of potentially maybe on the order of $40 per gallon. The other thing I wanted to do, in the two tables on the right just show this up, is there's a couple of things we should think about when you're setting fees and anticipating what type of revenue you can pull back from the project. One is we like to look at the project costs without that 5 million contingency that we're talking about. So the sewer cost without that 5 million contingency is something like 7. If we further look at the fact that a significant amount of that cost, if you look at that top table in black there, over 10 million, almost 11 million of that is surface restoration, mostly paving, which tends to be a very high cost for sewer projects in Nantucket. Something on the order of 40% of the cost or more sometimes. We also wanted to look at, okay, well, if you take that out, because that's typically something that you don't better the people in the area for, especially because a lot of the streets we're talking about here are pretty well traveled by folks that don't necessarily get the sewers extended to their homes. So the second number we kind of look at for marker is we generate that bottom line in the blue box, which is about 21 million. That's more of without contingency, but also without sewer restoration. So you're talking about, you know, 21 to 32 million dollars. Our suggestion is that if you really wanted to increment the sewer capacity fee, if you went to at least $40 per gallon, you'd be recovering the equivalent. And again, how you use that money is a question, as Brian said, we should unpack a lot, but you'd be uncovering an equivalent amount of capital from the property served on the order of about that same 25% of the total sewer costs. Excluding contingency and surface restoration. So there is a reasonably decent amount of available wiggle room to use your fees, keep them reasonable, certainly keep them very reasonable in context of what other fees in other communities look like, but still recover a significant amount of capital that will help you pay for this project. Would not go against it. And that's all we kind of wanted to offer at this point. This is subjective. These details tend to get worked out over time. And you've got some decisions to make, but at least it gives you the background of what you might be able to do with the sewer capacity fee. if you wanted to do that, or if you wanted to do betterments, you know, we could have similar conversations. That's all.
Thank you guys for that. And don't go away. The other issue with not proceeding with the project now or at 2026 annual town meeting is 77 Bartlett Road. This property was acquired by the town recently for a sewer pump station that's integral to the project. It does have 2 dwellings on it. They are not usable because the septic system that serves them is failed. And in order for the homes to be able to be used, the septic system would either have to be replaced or we have to connect to sewer, or they're going to sit there until one of those 2 things happens. So our project manager, Kevin Manuel, prepared these couple of slides just to show you where these dwellings sort of stand and what we've talked about in order to, you know, hopefully not leave them empty for however long it's going to take to, it's just an issue to leave them empty for however long it's going to be till we get the sewer in place. Is Kevin on? Oh, okay. Kevin, you want to take us through these couple slides?
Sure, that's not a problem at all. So good evening, everyone. So for 77 Bartlett, as Libby said, we purchased these houses as part of this project. We closed on the house on December 5th, and for the price of 2.7, we were able to obtain both the main home and the guest home properties that are currently located on the property lot. Walking through the buildings with housing and real estate during the closing, we determined that these houses are generally serviceable, but they do need some cosmetic upgrades. We need to replace appliances. But as Libby mentioned, the biggest issue with the current properties in terms of occupancy is the septic system. Right now, we met with the health department last week, and because of the failure, it is on notice with them, and so they would expect a notice to abandon these septic systems if we chose not to replace them. We do have the potential to move towards connecting or looking into connecting to the sewer system via Marble Way, which is located behind the lot, but that is less than an ideal option for the houses. Eric, if you can move to the next one, please. And just to reiterate that this site is considered the primary location for the pumping station with the Somerset Needs project. Right now, as it stands, the houses would be able to remain on the lot, but we would have to remove the current septic system in its entirety to put the new pumping station in place. So if we were to move forward, for example, with wanting to utilize the houses if there is a delay in the project and replace the septic system, we could do that, but when we do come around to actually moving forward with the project and installing the pumping station, keep in mind that that septic system would have to then be removed in order for us to fit the pumping station. So we would not be able to have anybody living in the houses for an extended period of time at that point. Next slide, Erica. So again, just to reiterate some of the options available to the town if we were to move forward with the project in our original schedule as planned, we can maintain the properties through housing facilities with no occupancy, move forward with installing the pumping station, and then be able to connect to sewer, and then those houses would be ready for occupancy. The option I mentioned before about potentially connecting to sewer via Marble Way behind the lot would require an easement, and again, it's not an ideal situation based on the recommendations from our consultants. But if we were to move forward with the installation of a septic system, we'd have that added cost. Our housing department is currently looking at potentially getting estimates for that system so we know what that cost would be. And then the last option that we have talked about is potentially relocating the houses. Of course, we would need to identify another site within town, which would leave the lots vacant and allow us to have the available space still for the pumping station, but we could move those houses to a new site and get them ready for occupancy on a sooner or a more expedient date. And that's all I have on that. Any questions?
Brooke? Yep. We're talking about what time frame before these houses would be hooked up to sewer anyway, if the project moved forward. It's going to be several years, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering whether investing in a septic system makes sense anyway. Just to be able to have the housing units relatively cheap compared to moving the houses for sure. Just putting in a septic that'll work. So,
Yeah, we have also talked about that also because it's possible that we could do less renting of other units and own our own.
Right.
And
Save
not
money.
have to pay rent to other people. So there's that. Although, as I understand it, ultimately the septic system will have to be removed in order for the pump station to go where it is. So
it'll be some cost.
we might want to do a little cost benefit analysis, I guess, maybe of the septic versus not.
And then my other question is like, is there a way to phase this project to get that part done sooner rather than later, like the Bartlett Road part, and then do it in 2 phases and hook up the rest of the Somerset Needs area at a later time and do all the paving so that we're doing, you know, a $15 million project rather than a $43 million project, and get it set up to add everything else at a later date when we don't have so much pressure on capital. And then I am curious, I see Emily here, and I'm sort of apropos of what Matt asks, and I'm really cognizant of time because it's 10 to 8, but I'd be curious, if not tonight, I'd love to hear what the Land and Water Council's position is on this, because they are probably analyzing the potential build out after sewer versus the benefits of sewer, because that's what they do. So I'm curious if Emily has an opinion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land and Water Council. Thanks for the opportunity. I won't take up too much time, but I was a little concerned last week at the potential elimination of an article for this town meeting for the Somerset sewer extension. So I do really appreciate this follow-up discussion. The planned sewer extensions in our identified needs areas are certainly integral components to nutrient management to improve water quality in our sensitive watersheds. I do absolutely acknowledge the challenges that the select board and community are facing as far as the expense of all the projects that are on the docket. I don't know ultimately if postponing this one will reduce the cost burden. But it does seem as though there are some other options on the table as far as looking at what financing is available and making a decision a little bit later on, possibly phasing the project. But we do certainly still think that it should be a priority. At the same time, I would like to acknowledge and just express appreciation for the select board's discussion last week with regard to potential changes in the growth and development patterns of the Somerset area with sewer extension. Certainly, as has been discussed, we don't want to trade off one environmental impact for others. I think that with the timeline that we're talking about for a project like this, that there are opportunities to address that. And I do hope that based on the discussion so far, that the town will proactively work with an opportunity to explore options to address it. I think whether we're looking at having a detailed analysis lot by lot, or creatively looking at options for addressing some of these concerns through the zoning bylaw or other means, that there are things that it would be really great to have discussions with the residents and the community about. I know obviously one of the select board's strategic priorities is environmental leadership, and I think that wherever we go next with sewer, the same question is going to come up. And I think it's a really great opportunity for the select board to be an environmental leader and just start to engage in the discussions around how we balance those and address these issues. So I guess I would just tonight leave you with 2 requests. One would be if for financial reasons, the select board does decide to postpone this and not move it forward on the warrant this year, I hope that you won't delay it for too long. And the second request would be to look at how you can help facilitate these discussions among the community and appropriate town departments on addressing what will the environmental impacts be of bringing sewer versus remaining septics, because I think that is a really important conversation to have, and we're definitely very interested in being involved in that conversation. I just hope that we don't end up having the same conversation back here. Like, I would really love to just hear some thoughts from the board on how to move that discussion forward on exploring options for addressing the potential impacts of bringing sewer to these areas. Thank you.
I'm starving. Thank you for talking about this. So I'm gonna say a few things that will help us with what Emily just said. I'm actually agreeing with Emily a little bit here on this.
We won't tell anyone
This project, Matt, was built in '84, 3M. McElderry, Mooney, and Menard, just so you know. Now, we should have sewered this, we should have watered this, but we didn't. But we did it at Pine Valley a year or two later. Now, those two subdivisions were in RC2. There was a deed restriction for 30 years on Pine Valley that expired in 2015. Every single lot in that entire subdivision could have A&R'd. But we changed it to R10 limited. Now, none of them can subdivide. But they got 25% ground cover on 15,000 square foot lots average. So we preserved the subdivision, but still gave them the ability to add more building. But in this neighborhood, we've got bigger lots, slightly under 20,000, with water brought by some of the homes that have been sold to people that can afford to bring the water down from the fire protection that was brought down Somerset 15 years ago or whenever that was done. So we have to think about these lots, mostly locals still. Right now, you can't build a covenant and a tertiary or a covenant second dwelling. You can't build a family compound on a 19,000 square foot lot if you don't have sewer in there. So you're forcing them to sell to the off-island buyer that could care less about a second dwelling because they're going to build a cabana, a pool, a nice house, likely tear down the house that's there because they can walk to the beach. It's beautiful. This area is still local though. And the other side, we haven't even talked about the other side, the Bartlett's farm side. So with what we're dealing with the ADU, which is, I think, being dealt with pretty well so far, complicated. Christie's sitting over there, right? This is a prime area for covenant lots where people can sell a covenant lot to keep their house instead of selling it for a gentrification sale. And these are the kind of conversations we need to have. I can't stand seeing what happens with regular neighborhoods of local families. They're all selling out because they can get a lot of money. But those that want to stay, that don't have big mortgages, but they need some cushion, can sell a covenant lot now because somebody can build a house with, if there's sewer, where you run out of bedrooms in the current system that's there. This is a very unique situation that can be analyzed by somebody way smarter than me as far as the numbers go, but I'm right about what I'm saying in the sense of this whole thing. These lots are prime for keeping locals in their properties. So I just wanted to throw that in there because this is a really good conversation. You know, the other areas of the island that this happened to already had sewer. The Gray Avenue situation is a perfect example of it. But this is different. This is sort of waiting for a change, but change that can create more local sales of local folks staying in their properties or selling to another local, depending upon what the situation is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. And I want to say Nat is 100% right. There'll be more gentrification in that area as soon as we run the water through, unless we figure out how to incentivize otherwise.
Yeah. So here's why I think a phased project makes sense. We get the pump station and the Bartlett Road infrastructure in place. And it gives us more time to figure out the answer to this question. And that will lay the groundwork for the next area that is in line to get sewered and the one after that.
I had asked about phasing it last week. Did we get any? Is it feasible? Can we get numbers?
Dan, are you still on?
Yeah, we're here. So we can phase the project, but one of the difficulties is if you build a pump station, you need wastewater flow to go to it. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. So it gets a little complicated in sizing of the station. You know, you're gonna have to spend money on a smaller pump and maybe a second force main to make sure the flow gets pumped up to Surfside Road. So it's possible. It's just gonna take, it'll take a little bit of thought to figure out what you can do.
In addition, if you wanted to complete the roadway realignment at Raceway, that might make sense to do at least that portion of the sewer pipeline work along with the pump station. So there's some thought process that probably should go into what things the town wants to achieve with that first phase.
So why don't we look at whether we can, a proposal to phase it before we make a final decision? We're not sending the warrant until January 22nd. But
21st, but also you do have the sewer master plan update workshop meeting on sometime in January before the warrant is needing to be adopted. So hopefully, Dan and Kent, maybe we can have at least the phasing information ready for that meeting and our septic analysis cost as well. There is no way to get a lot by lot analysis as mentioned before then. And also that's going to cost some money. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, and again, Libby, I'm not sure it needs to be a lot by lot at that level. When I was looking at this today, one of the things I've been playing around with AI, put in all my sales to one place. It's amazing what it can do. So I asked it, can you use AI and attach that to GIS and make these kind of things, and how do planners do it? And they basically said, yeah, you can. You have to still check it closely, but for rough, within 90%, it can do it almost instantaneously. So eventually this stuff won't be, and I think pretty soon, this stuff will not be let's hire somebody, let's count every lot. Eventually it's going to be, what's the impact? Here are the inputs we're worried about, and it'll spit it right out for us. And we can say, well, what if it's this? And what if it's this? And so I think that's the direction I hope that we go soon, because that's what we need, are rough numbers for these areas. What are the rough impacts? How will this play out? And what it's good at is numbers. It's good at that type of thing. Anyway.
Tracy McDonald, real estate manager. I just wanted to add one more thing, going back to Nat's comment about the 3Ms. These properties are all land court properties. It is not easy to do a land court subdivision. They also have those restrictions on their faces of their certificates of title, which means they have to expunge those restrictions in order to subdivide. It's a long and expensive process. So I wouldn't think that people are just going to be running out there to to be doing a big land court subdivision, or rear lots and all those kind of things that we do see. That's not going to, I don't think, happen immediately.
Madam Chair, can we keep Tracy up there? Because she's way smarter than me. This is good. This is good. Okay, I forgot to say something. This is R10. They can't subdivide. There's no subdivision allowed. We changed it in 2009. Forgot about that. I had that written down, but I forgot to say it. These lots are all in R10, so that they're all under 20. So they can't, there's no A&R here. This is infill ground cover development that can happen through sewer being there and not having to deal with the restrictions of bedrooms. I forgot all about that. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Nat.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can wait on this. And I mean, I still worry about everything I said last week. Tom?
Madam Chairman, I just make one quick placeholder. So we had that meeting with planning, AHT, us, and Board of Health on housing. And to Nat's point about lots and covenants and all that, because of what we were talking about, what I was talking about the economics of all that and interest rates and all that, I think this is a good example of how we can factor that into future strategic planning in that for exactly this reason, the reasons that Nat is talking about and then Matt echoed and et cetera.
So the other, I think we have our marching orders on Somerset. The other projects that, and again, you don't have to discuss these tonight, but, or, decide tonight rather. But the other ones that are up are the town employee housing, seasonal improvements at phase 4, that's at the Loran Barracks, the Tom Nevers debris removal phase 2. Maybe, Brian, now would be a good time to take a look at the tax rate calculator that we've been preparing annually so that people can put in what their property value is and determine the, we're not going to do a specific property, I don't think, but
No.
you can put your own property in there and find out what the tax bill impact would be to you. But can you go over that?
Well, we have one in here right now. Actually, the Excel sheet would do it on the right-hand side, but we've built it based. I know you can stay right there, actually, Erica.
That is a little bit hard to see, but this is in the packet.
Right, this is in the packet for the board. As we've always done initially to this presentation, when we're talking about what may end up on the warrant, we've built the estimated tax increase for all these projects based on the average residential value all in, doesn't matter whether it's year round or not, which is $3.5 million this year. The average year round assessed value of 2.2 million. The CIP and open space. What we've done in the presentation and what we've always done is shown what the average year-round assessed value of $2.2 million with the residential valuation or exemption, would be on the far right hand. That residential exemption was $899,000 this year. Typically, what we've done when the board actually does set the projects and the ballot, we will then put online the tax impact calculator. But if you want to, in that blue box, Erica, we have done it in
I can't even read that. I don't know what it is.
D4. Yep, right there.
You've got 3.2.
Yeah, so that actually has 2.5 million in it, or 3.5 million, and on the far left-hand column, it shows you the first column in T is without the residential exemption, and then U is for the board, and on the screen there is the residential exemption. That calculator will ultimately end up on the website once we finalize what is going to be going into the ballot. But we have talked about putting this on preliminarily so everyone can see and go in and put their own valuations in. But we have provided in your packet in the PowerPoint that table with calculating those values based on the average residential year-round CIP and open space as well. Right there.
Do you want to just maybe say what they are?
Sure. So if we're calculating all of these projects on the average residential value, of 3.597 million, the capital exclusion would add approximately $183.63 to the tax bill. The same for the average year round, which would be 112 with no residential exemption. CIP, commercial, industrial, personal property would be $184.20, and open space would be $8.93. And as we noted in the presentation, the average assessed valued year-round house with the residential exemption would be $66.41. For Island Home, going straight across, the average residential value would impact the tax bill in the amount of $572.43. The average year-round without a residential exemption, $350.13. CIP, $574.20. Open space, $27.84. And average year-round with the residential exemption, $207.02. Stadium renovations for the public schools. Average residential value would be impacted approximately $139.29. Average year round without the residential exemption, $85.19. CIP,
Brian,
139.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't think you need to go through
Oh, I thought you
CIP
wanted to.
or open space.
Okay.
I think people really just care about residential.
Okay. Tom Nevers debris removal, average residential value of 3.5 million would be impacted approximately $43.70. Average year round without the residential exemption, $26.73. And average year round with the residential exemption, $15.80. Town employee housing, average residential value, 3.5 million would be $38.24. Average year round value, 2.2 million would be 23.39 cents. Average year round with residential exemption would be $13.83. Seasonal employee housing, dormitory renovations for the average residential value would be $29.50. Average year round without the residential exemption, $18.04. And average year round with residential exemption, $10.67. Somerset sewer extension is broken into two pieces because one thing that we really need to address is the fact that a portion of this would be at 2%, which is the eligible construction cost for the sewer project. And then there's a portion that would be at what we've estimated at 4% for ineligible costs. So the sewer extension for Somerset for SRF eligible costs, average residential value, $192.04, average year round, $117.46, and the average year round with the residential exemption, that first portion would be $69.45. The non-SRF eligible cost for the average residential value would be $61.53. Average year round without the residential exemption would be $37.64. And the average year round with residential exemption would be $22.25. They all were approved on a ballot. The average residential value tax bill would be impacted, we estimate, in the amount of $1,260.35. The average year round without the residential exemption, $770.90. And the average year round with residential exemption is $455.81.
So that's a lot to absorb with somebody reading it like that. It is in the packet and there is an interactive calculator online. Is there?
It's not
yet?
online yet but we typically don't do it. We're going to put it up in advance now, but typically it's been after they've set the ballot. So we knew exactly what to put in, but we'll have them build it now.
Okay. And the debt exclusions would be an increase for the life of the debt and
Correct.
the capital would be for 1 year only.
Capital would be 1 year and all of these others would be for the life of the debt. I would let everybody know that the majority of them were financed over 25 years, but Island Home was extended out over 30 years to try to see what the minimization of that impact would be.
So,
Oh,
sorry.
go.
I just was gonna say any other questions. I think we finished presenting what we wanted to present based on your discussion from last week, but we're happy to answer questions.
No, just one quick comment. Average residential value is average of everybody.
That is of year round, not the average residential value is everybody, regardless of whether
Yes.
you're seasonal or year round.
So if
And
you
then-
take the residential exemption out of that number, which you have to get your 2.2,
That average year round is just year round residents,
Mhm.
regardless of whether you qualify for the exemption or
Okay.
not. And then the far right-hand column takes the 2.2, subtracts the 899,000, and then estimates what the bill would look like.
Gotcha. And
Yep.
so my point is the first column then is basically there's a number that's sort of that I always go to. It's closer to 4 million. The average, when you take out the year-round exemptions, then the average that's left is closer to 4 million. So you're taking homes that are less valuable and you're giving them a great break. And the homes that are left are worth about somewhere between 3 and 4 times as much, even before, 2-3 times as much before the break. And so that is sort of a bit of a undercount. The average residential value is a bit of an undercount for someone that isn't in that situation. It's just sort of, anyway. And you can do the math. I've done the math a few times. So I think that, so it is, and then there's a lot of people who don't have the residential exemption who have businesses, who have employee housing. And when I think I did some of this last year, and it was a substantial, I think I told everybody here, I'll probably do it again this year. You know, it's a lot of loaves of bread to be able to pay for all of the changes. And I think that's the part that we have to be cognizant of. There's a lot of people who are, you know, that don't, you know, may not have the capacity to do it. So.
Okay.
So another project, there's a couple other projects we want to go over. We would like to take you through Tom Nevers debris removal phase 1. That is a funded project. It's been permitted, it is about to start. It will be very visible. So we wanted to give you an overview of it. And since it's out in the same area, Matt, you asked last week about the renovation of the roller hockey rink out at Tom Nevers Park. And we have a quick slide to just give you the details on that. And DPW director and Parks and Rec manager are going to take us through this. I think we've got, well, Drew, you can introduce it and then turn to Charlie. That's the plan.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Libby. Did you want to do the quick one slide on the hockey rink since that's capital first? Or do you want to do the?
I'd say
debris
sure.
removal?
Yeah, sure.
Eric, I think if you just go up in the agenda packet.
Other way, Erica.
Right
Yeah. Charlie, you want to cover this one slide?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be brief because I know we're getting along here. The title of this is a little misleading with the hockey rink reconstruction. This will be, the plan would be to reconstruct this using the same technique as we did down at Jetties and the tennis court, grind the surface. We use that as the new surface for post-tension concrete system. And then this would come back lined for tennis, pickleball, basketball, and roller hockey, replacing the lower, the lower 4 feet would be boards with vinyl fence on top. This would be, I think a great recreation asset for us to a place we're about to be building a bike path to. We added the playground, was updated this last year, and we saw a large uptick in usage out there now that there was some nicer playground structure. I've watched people out here kind of struggle to kind of play some roller hockey. You can actually see in the picture there is a guy who was fetching his basketball. So it is slightly used now. I think if this came back and got redone, it would bring a great asset to the area. Yeah, so I don't know if there are any questions on this one.
This one is, this is one of those things where private individuals do it and the town is stuck with it. And now it's our responsibility to fix it. And, and when it was originally done, oh, we'll take care of it. This is wonderful. And now we're stuck with $1 million renovation, et cetera. I'm not sure, this isn't a lot of money in the scheme of things. I'm not sure how much it really will be used. Maybe in the summer, when it's nice out, maybe it'll be used a bit more out there. But, I would wonder, is our money better spent elsewhere in some regards? And so anyway, I think if that wasn't there, would we be saying, let's spend $1 million and build tennis courts and stuff here?
I can answer that. It was identified in the Parks and Rec master plan that was completed in 2020. It was kind of a whole reconstruction of this place. And a lot of those things were put on hold due to coastal resiliency. But part of that plan was to actually get rid of the baseball field, which we won't do because it's now being used by Little League and potentially a men's league that's forming. But there was a creation of basketball courts and tennis courts proposed for this area. So this kind of, ticks that box for us on the Parks and Rec master plan.
My sense is if we wanted to see something out there used a lot, put a tin roof on it and put, 7-a-side soccer there, and it'd be used all winter. It would be constant. Put some lights and, it wouldn't even have to be heated, wouldn't have to hang on it, just keep the rain and stuff off. People would use it constantly. But that's, that's for Park and Rec to figure out. I just think it's pretty far away and it's hard to get people there. Anyway.
I think it is actually pretty heavily used out there.
I could be wrong.
Definitely more in nice weather.
Yeah, I think in nice weather we used. Anyway.
All right.
We just wanted to answer any questions that
Thank you. I
come up.
understand it better now. Thank you.
Okay, Drew, go ahead with Tom Nevers debris removal.
Great, thanks, Libby. So yeah, good evening, Drew Padno, DPW Director. Thanks for having us here to provide a hopefully pretty quick update on the Tom Nevers debris removal Phase 1 project. Just a quick overview of the project before we get into the specifics. This project is aimed at the removal of buried debris within the limits of the park, removal of debris, concrete structures, etc. on the beach, and then finally removal of materials and pipes and things protruding out of the bluff face. Additionally, in order to access the beach both now by the contractor and in the future by the DPW, to keep up with the maintenance of the beach, we will be installing a beach access ramp on the west side of the property, which Charlie will get into details on shortly. In the image on the right side of this slide, you can see the approximate limits of the work zone outlined in a white dashed line, which includes the park area west of the hockey rink that we were just discussing and the dirt track, and then the entire length of the beach waterfront of the Tom Nevers parcel. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Charlie. He'll get into some of the details of the project.
Thanks. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. So here's just a basic breakdown of the timeline. There was $2 million appropriated at 2024 town meeting, which kind of started the project. We progressed pretty well until we hit December 2024 when 2 winter storms claimed 40 feet of the bluff face, which put a kind of a pause in the plans that were in place and caused us to take a step back and revise. We then proceeded with the permitting, pre-filing meetings. Permitting on this is very complicated. There's 9 different federal, state agencies, and local, from COMCOM, MEPA, Mass DEP has 2 permits, MESA, MHC, Army Corps of Engineers, Coastal Zone Management, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. To try to get them all to agree and sit down and move timely was quite an adventure. We moved forward with construction documents and permitting through the summer, put the project out to bid in October. We just recently, last week, awarded Wixon Construction Company the contract for $1.2 million. As of Monday, as of Monday last week, they were on island setting up construction fencing and erosion controls, and we expect to be underway fully once we come back in the new year. And we've got like a 60-day window that we're looking to complete the project on. Go to the next slide, please. So this is a phased approach, as we talked about. Phase 1 will be focused on the subsurface debris. Within the ramp footprint, we kind of chose the area here to create this access ramp. One, for the fact that you can see the blobs kind of on the side of the screen there, also coincide with kind of the lowest area is in terms of the height of the bluff face. So it created a great access point for us, kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, excavate that debris out, get rid of it, create the ramp for future access. When we get on the beach, we'll be clearing debris from the beach line, the high tide line, and things protruding from the bluff face. We will not be excavating into the bluff face because we don't want to create a soft spot that will promote erosion. Phase 2, which you saw on the capital plan for tonight, is for capital request, would be to remove the subsurface debris inland from the bluff to prevent it from becoming beach debris in the future. If you go to the next slide, please, Erica. The beach access ramp will remain in place once the contractor is finished to allow DPW to get down onto the beach for future debris removal. You can kind of see on the photo there's that line of concrete blocks. I would call that the line in the sand. Is a bad pun as to where phase 2 would stop. So will be a bit of debris there that we will clean up as the DPW, as the road edge falls down or some things out of the bluff. And the ramp will remain in place until kind of phase 2 and phase 1 meet each other. It will not serve as a public access point for vehicles, but only for the DPW. And the end of the ramp will be blocked with sacrificial sand to prevent erosion from washing up the sides of the ramp. Go to the next slide, please. Kick it back over to Drew here.
Thanks, Charlie. So yeah, this is a pretty unique project, which presented a number of challenges. First and foremost, as Charlie mentioned, we had to permit this through 9 state and federal agencies. With that came a number of restrictions, timelines, deadlines from each that had to be met. First of which was the Army Corps, their requirement to be under contract for construction by December 9th, which is why Wix's contract was in front of the select board on December 3rd. the need to be under contract by a specific date also made our timeline for bidding, the evaluation of the bids and award, a very aggressive kind of schedule. And kudos to the finance department and their procurement team for making it happen. In order to award, we not only needed to be sure that we had enough money to cover the construction, but also the construction administration costs. So during the evaluation period, we had a lot of back and forth with the contractor, our engineers, and the UXO, or unexploded ordinances subcontractor, to understand, a lot of the details, but early on, what the anticipated construction kind of approach is, as far as number of crews, the timeline for the duration of construction, etc. And we basically had to make sure that Weston and Sampson and their UXO subcontractors scope and fee fit within our budget. Otherwise, we won't be able to make the construction contract award. Obviously, we can't really do one without the other. We were also limited in terms of when the construction could take place, as this beach area is mapped priority habitat for piping plovers. So while we wouldn't want to do this work in the summer for obvious reasons, and we're certainly hopeful that the public can recreate here more safely this upcoming summer, we were limited as far as available construction dates and duration, despite our local experts assuring the state that piping plovers haven't been observed at this location in about a decade or so. As Charlie mentioned, the construction timeline from January to March, April-ish, is going to be a bit of a challenge for the contractor, especially when working on the ramp down to the beach and then performing the actual beach cleanup portions of the work, since they'll essentially be on the beach during peak nor'easter season. Lastly, as I'm sure most people are aware of, there is a potential for unexploded ordinances at this site. While the federal government has assured us that there's a 0% chance any UXOs will be discovered during the project, I think the combination of local knowledge and experience of our UXO subcontractor will tell us that there's probably a 25% chance that UXOs are eventually uncovered somewhere on the site during this work. Because of the potential for UXOs, the sequence of work was carefully detailed in the bid documents, and it will require a methodical approach to ensure the highest degree of safety throughout the project. As such, we certainly hope that the public, as curious as they may be, remain at a safe distance from the project site. That UXO team will be on site all day, every day during construction activities, or I'm sorry, excavation activities. And we are fortunate they have past experience here on island, both east and west of this site. They're a very specialized crew and operation. There's not many firms out there to choose from, and not surprisingly, they do come at a high cost. So we, the original $2 million appropriation, a portion of that went to the design and permitting, and the rest is going to the construction oversight. And we're happy to be able to move this this kind of important, and I would almost say long overdue project forward, which obviously was quite complex to get to this point. So Erica, you can go to the last slide. And with all that, I just wanted to quickly thank Charlie. This is not necessarily a Parks and Rec project, but he's really stepped up to champion this since day one. And then also want to thank Vince Murphy, who was very helpful, as he always is, with elements of the design and all of the permitting intricacies. So thanks to both of them. Thanks again to the board for having us this evening, and Charlie and I are available to answer any questions you might have for us.
Any other questions? Thank you. It'll be great to see this done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, I do. Sorry. Wait, someone had their hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Matt Peel.
Excuse me. Hi, thank you, Don. Just a quick question for Drew. And I find this area really interesting. And I've gone out here fishing a few times, and I was just curious about this. I know there's been like some old tanks, things like that, that are cement that have kind of gone into the water and stayed in there. And I've gone out there fishing because it creates some structure for the fish over there. And I'm sure there's a lot of permits, and this is completely out of my wheelhouse, but has there ever been any discussions for something like this of actually just dragging those pieces out and creating some sort of like a reef, or something like that, to kind of create some fish habitat or some sort of habitat for maybe divers or something like that? And I feel like this would be a great area for something like that. And I mean, we don't have a lot of structure for fish on this island, you know, physical rock type structure. And so it was just, so I really like the pieces of stuff, you know, all of the stuff that's going into the water, because like I said, it's, but it hasn't produced that many fish, so maybe I'm wrong about it. So, but yeah, that's my question, if there's ever been discussions on any of that.
Sure, happy to answer that. We did not evaluate that as part of this project. I know that there have been kind of outside discussions or ideas at times about artificial reefs and things from a coastal resilience perspective. I can tell you that as part of this project, the Army Corps of Engineers is not permitting us to remove any of the structures that are below the high tide or the low tide line. I forget which one, but basically anything that's in the water is going to be forced to remain. It was actually kind of a concern of ours because depending on how deep the bathymetry is, the subsurface elevation and depth, we brought up our concern about danger to mariners and boat traffic in the area. But I guess just to answer your question, the existing structures that are providing some good habitat for fish and fishing, those will remain in place. But the structures on the beach above the high tide line and further inland will be removed.
Drew, now you've got me. I was trying not to ask a question, but I just assumed that are there any structures there that are particularly dangerous? There was some on the South Shore in another area a while ago that I know a lot of people were having trouble because it was an old septic and it had pipes sticking out of it and kids were getting cut on it and it was really dangerous. It was right in the surf. Is there anything like that out here?
Not particularly. There are some large concrete structures that are on the beach. And as I mentioned, you know, anything that's basically outside of the water will be removed. One of the challenges in permitting this was kind of explaining to the state agencies why this is such a necessary thing to move forward. I think that they have this view that erosion happens very slowly, but what we have to explain to them is these big concrete structures are falling from 20 or 30 feet, you know, above the beach. So although it might seem like it happens slowly, those things tumble pretty fast. And then it's really difficult to get them off the beach. And we wanted to establish a point of access to keep up with the maintenance of this beach. But the stuff that is in the kind of at the shore break it doesn't have the protruding pipes and things that you're mentioning. But Army Corps of Engineers will not allow us to remove the stuff from basically within the water.
Thank you.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway.
Okay, next on the town manager's report is a review of potential articles for the 2026 annual town meeting warrant. As I have previously reviewed with you, the items new since your last discussion about warrant articles are in bold. And on those, there are some, I think, revisions to zoning, potential zoning articles. Is Leslie still on? Or Megan? Okay, so Leslie and or Megan, can one of you quickly review, and do we have the list? There we go.
Libby, I'm here. I'm just having a bit of a computer glitch with my camera, but I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We're showing on the screen the list that's been updated as of December 14th. You want to just take
go through it, Leslie, or do you want me to?
If you want to, you can, but I will just touch quickly at the bottom of the list on the NP and EDC enabling legislation. I sent a draft of that to the town manager today. It's something that the commission voted on quite some time ago. They talked about the legislation at their meeting on Monday evening and decided to try to have one last effort to come up with a compromise article with the citizen petitioner. So we're scheduling that for early January. We don't have a date yet. And I've been working to find a facilitator, moderator for that meeting. So hopefully that will be a success.
That's good news. I hope it is a success.
Yeah,
Me too.
I would stress that it's really important to try and get to a place where one article can go to town meeting and go up to the State House. Hopefully they can do that.
Okay, thank you for that. Zoning?
So some of the zoning changes from the last time you saw this, we removed a couple of the map change articles just because to try and focus our efforts on some of the other RC2 phase outs. Some bylaw changes. We still are going through the process with accessory dwelling units, what that was on your last list. Community land trust is new. This is the intent of this is to insert a new definition and create some exemptions for community land trust. Coastal resilience are still underway. We had Leslie and I had a meeting with Christy and Dylan last week to discuss bringing back some changes to our interval ownership bylaw. The Vineyard actually has a really great one that's similar to ours, but does create some other enforcement mechanisms. So we wanted to introduce that. And then the board at their last meeting, they discussed perhaps updating the inclusionary housing bylaw specific to rear lot subdivisions. So getting a little bit tighter with the restrictions on requiring year-round deed restrictions in connection with rear lot subdivisions. So that is also a new concept since the last time you saw this list.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. General bylaw changes. There's one item that is in bold. It relates to rental car bylaw changes. We reviewed this at your December 3rd meeting, as is noted in the list. No article is currently recommended for the 2026 annual town meeting because of pending legislation related to peer-to-peer car sharing. So that was just
And I'm not,
confirming that.
and we have, I'm not sure that we will be, I would argue we won't be subject to that unless they, specifically take 58 out. Because we have a law that they've already approved, but we'll find out when we get there.
Yes, because there's
Yeah, the state would have to say, they can't just change I don't think they can just change our laws, but that they've already approved without, without doing it.
if everyone agrees that the law as interpreted by some is the way it is interpreted.
The court will sort that out at some point, unfortunately.
Anyway, if you all want to have more discussion about that at your next meeting, that's totally
Yeah, we
fine.
don't
John
need to
could-
tonight, no.
Okay. Okay, home rule petitions. There is one that Tracy has been, real estate manager has been talking with our legislators about that has already been approved by town meeting. And however, there were some errors in it, and we're under discussion as to whether or not we can resubmit it with the errors corrected or correct it and get it amended by the board and do it that way. So we're sort of talking about that still, I think. New home rule petitions. Coastal resiliency districts. I don't think that's going to be ready. And I think there's been some general agreement that is not going to be ready for 2026.
Yeah.
It looks like we're probably going to have a home rule petition for the Somerset Lane multi-use path. And Tracy has had some discussion with the land council about this. There's a conservation restriction that runs across property that would be the most desirable for a multi-use path running along Somerset Lane from Hummock Pond Road. And the purpose would be to authorize the select board to acquire necessary easements over those conservation restrictions. And that will probably require an amendment to the conservation restriction. So it's under discussion. Sure, very, very briefly.
So this was a home rule petition that was put forth, I think, a few years ago, and it was problematic, and the restriction needs to be revised in advance and then re-home rule petitioned with the amendment already in place to allow for a bike path. So the current restriction has, an exclusion for a bike path. You can't have one. If we can get that revised, then we can resubmit with the revised version and get the process going.
Okay, Mass General Law acceptances. There was one that I actually had in my file that I forgot about. It's acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5N. It expands the tax work-off program to include qualified veterans. I think we would probably want to accept that, put that forward. And now we've got some real estate related articles that have been a little more refined on the list I've had under review. So we've got something I think we have maybe already talked about a little bit. There's an easement. We need to convey a utility easement over a portion of Waite Drive for the Tacoma Green housing in favor of National Grid. That's pretty standard when they're running electric service to a property. They require you to give them an easement. We've done that several times in other situations. Miller Lane. Tracy, do you want to explain this one? And I think there might be a map.
So I'll just talk briefly in advance of this. So the town used to own a lot called B2 that ran from Airport Road all the way to where Richmond is now. And that lot was subdivided, and the layout of Miller Lane as it exists now was laid out. I think it was around maybe number 5. Keep going. Keep going. One more. Yep, this one. You'll have to blow it up a bit. So there are 4 interior lots that abut this B2 or old B2 lot. And when it was subdivided into 4 lots. So there's the layout of Miller Lane, and then that ends, and there are 3 lots and then 1 additional lot. The lot at the end of the Richmond side was granted to Housing Nantucket. The 2 interior lots were granted to the land bank, and it left this 1 residual tiny lot that's not part of the layout of Miller Lane and is needed for access to these 4, housing lots. So we had a request for an easement over the lot. We could do an amended order of layout. I've talked to KP Law about that. It's not the best solution. We could decide to dispose of it, but it is this lot that's just kind of hanging out there they do need access over to get to their lots. So that's what that's all about. So we would need, in order to grant the easement, we'd need a warrant article. In order to amend the layout, we'd need a warrant article. In order to name it surplus property, we'd need a warrant article.
And
So
on this, which lot for the public, which lot is it?
so Erica, can you go to the next plan that I included? This is the land court plan. So see the tiny yellow lot that I've highlighted? It's that tiny little piece. And we hold it in a certificate of title. It's just the residual lot left on the certificate.
So one of the things Tracy and I have discussed with some of these warrant articles is that if it's not really a request generated from the town for some town-related purpose, we really need something from the requester to explain what they are seeking and why. The next one is the grant of a sewer easement over a portion of 95 Goldfinch. This would enable some potential sewer connections to the sewer pump station that is in Noshop. And again, that needs more information as well. And it gets a little bit complicated.
Nope, keep going down the other way.
Not
I guess.
tremendously complicated, but it again is more a request
that
coming
one.
from a third party.
Correct. So they were requesting to connect directly to from 66 Old South Road directly into our pumping station that is at 95 Goldfinch. I've highlighted, sort of the, ancillary parcels, which, sort of can all connect in once that one line is in. They are all existing connected to sewer now through a pumping system. So it's not additional capacity under the current configuration. It's just a more streamlined situation. And again, this would be the town granting an easement to the owner at 66 Old South Road.
Lastly, there is a requested article regarding Newtown Cemetery, I think to formalize the bounds of the cemetery, but you want to give a quick overview?
Correct. So there have been a number of articles related to this parcel in Newtown Cemetery, and the Cemetery Commission has for a long time wanted Newtown Cemetery to be officially dedicated a public cemetery, which it is not. It is laid out as this number 46 Sparks Avenue. There is no plan of record. So we have asked the Cemetery Commission to create a perimeter plan that will lay out it officially. And so then we need the warrant article to then officially be able to convey it in the care custody of the Cemetery Commission.
Thank you, Tracy. And lastly, that is basically
That's
it
right?
for new items since last time. So your next review of this will be January 7th. There might be a little bit of updating between now and then we're heading towards the January 21st date. I think that's it for the town manager report.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have citizen departmental committee requests and reports, the housing office. Krista, you're up. Request for authorization to submit modification to the housing production plan certification request letter to Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for Chapter 40B Safe Harbor.
Thank you, Christy Ferrantella, the Housing Director. If you remember, in front of you last month was a request to EOHLC to request 1 year of safe harbor due to adding 31 units during this calendar year. Since then, Tacoma Green pulled their building permits last Thursday for 64 units, which are all eligible for inclusion on our subsidized housing inventory list. So we're requesting to submit a modification to our certification, requesting a full 2 years. And just for the public to understand, we need to add 0.5% to our subsidized housing inventory list to apply for safe harbor. And this is actually going to be adding 1.5% in total in this calendar year. So we've made substantial progress.
Move
And-
approval.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you all
And-
for your support in the community.
You're welcome. And then number 2, Housing Office request for approval of Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust authorization for $550,000 to continue the lease to locals program.
Yes. So last year, the board appropriated $450,000 to the Lease to Locals program, and that was through a grant to Housing Nantucket to administer this program with Placemate. Over this past year, we've decided to have the Affordable Housing Trust run the program, and looking at the incentives for both bringing on new properties and renewing people for both a second and third year. The total program cost is $550,000. At the December 1st meeting, the select board approved Placemate as the administrator in that contract for administrating these funds. And just a reminder that this is kind of a short-term program that converts underutilized structures into year-round housing, and they've been able to unlock housing for nearly 100 community members through this program. So we see it as being really successful as we're seeing other units like Tacoma Green being built out. This is providing temporary year-round solutions.
Any questions? Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the airport request to increase the airport fuel revolving fund spending limit. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, Select Board members. I'm Warren Smith, Airport Manager here at Nantucket Memorial Airport. Just to kind of give a brief overview of the revolver, it's no secret that the airport sells aviation fuel. This is implemented through a revolving fund, which separately accounts for specific revenues that fluctuate with demand, and of course allows for continuous replenishment of the funds. What this helps us do is to accurately predict fuel costs and demand 15 months in advance. And so this evening I'm requesting an increase in the spending limit cap from 6 million to 8.5 million. Or just to be clear, I'm requesting an increase of 2.5 million to the cap. All airports, of course, rely on fuel sales as a primary revenue source. As the next slide shows, it just kind of gives a brief overview of our current operating budget at 2.2 million. It shows what next year's operating budget is. And the reason why I'm showing this is because if fuel purchases exceed the revolver cap, fuel purchases are then paid out of the airport's operating budget. So please keep that in mind. Additional revenue above budget and fuel revolver funds is used to pay off and down bans as well as debt. It also provides savings for future capital projects. As you are all well aware, we do have a pretty large scale project coming up in the future with a runway 624 shift and rehabilitation. As well, currently the airport has spent over $10 million in PFAS mitigation that has been funded by the stewardship of this revolver. Next slide, please. So just to kind of provides just some of the myths that people may have about the airport. A lot of the first myth is airports want to sell more fuel. In all reality, our fuel supply is already pretty heavily constrained as we are capped with so much fuel we can actually hold on the airport right now, as well as with the barge reservations that we have to compete with the other energy companies on the island. Myth number two, there are more private jets, so fuel sales must be up. That is actually not true. Within the last 5 years, just last year was the first time in 5 years that we actually saw an increase in total operations, but only at 0.6%. So what's the difference? It's because the airplanes that we are getting are a lot larger aircraft. So like a Global 750 can take as much fuel as 3 or 4 Cessna 182s. So we're seeing large aircraft that fly farther and are taking far more fuel. Myth number three, high fuel prices cause high ticket prices, when in all reality, the airport actually provides a fuel discount for year-round signatory users of the airport. And then the fourth myth is JetBlue must take a lot of fuel since they are our longest serving commercial airline of the season, when in all reality, it's actually American Airlines who takes more fuel as they fly farther distances, even with smaller aircraft compared to JetBlue. Next slide, please. Thank you. So prior to COVID, the airport sold roughly $1.3 million or 1.3 million gallons of jet fuel annually. And post-COVID, that has risen up to 2.1 million gallons of jet fuel annually. An interesting statistic, within the last 30 years, since 1988, the airport has sold roughly 29 million gallons of aviation fuel. 30% of the fuel is actually sold to the commercial airlines, where the bulk majority, 70%, is given to the general aviation aircraft that come in. Just real quick here, this is showing the anticipated fuel purchasing until the end of our current fiscal year compared to last year's actuals. We are projected projected fuel purchases for the remainder of the year is roughly $2.7 million. Next slide, please. So of course, as of October of this year, the airport has already sold $5.5 million worth of aviation fuel. If you add in the last year's, if you add in last year's what happened last year based on the actual accruals last year, we're looking at roughly $8.3 million worth of fuel being sold for the remainder of this current fiscal year. Next slide, please. Just real quick through that, even as you can see with these numbers here, even after the fuel revolver increase, revenue would still exceed our budgeted amount for FY26. Last slide, please. Thank you. So what will we do with any of these excess funds balances? Of course, as I mentioned before, we would pay off the projects we took through the Capital Committee and Finance Committee in the 2026 cycle. This would also help us build more cash reserves for future capital projects and needs. It will contribute to the Employee Stabilization Fund, as we know housing is a definite need in order to try to lure more full-time employment to the island. And then, of course, this would continue to pay for PFAS investigation and remediation as we are currently doing. So thank you very much, and I seek your approval of that increase in the fuel revolver.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb? Malcolm?
I'm sorry. No, I'm on.
Oh, no, are you an aye?
No, I said aye.
Oh, sorry, we didn't hear you. Brooke Moore?
Aye.
My apologies, Madam Chair.
It's okay.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to real estate items. We have request for approval and execution of acceptance of grant of easements from Richmond Great Point Development.
I always clear the room. I'm presenting a request for acceptance and grant of easement over 4 and 6 Honeysuckle Drive for stormwater detention infrastructure maintenance and access area identified on the easement plan dated September 9th, 2025. That was included in your packet. These improvements were part of obligations agreed to in a memorandum of agreement between Richmond and the town and county dated October 17th, 2018. The project has been managed by the planning department. Patchy Engineering Associates inspected the work on May 28th, 2025, and the project has also thoroughly been reviewed by town staff, including DPW Director Drew Patnode, Sewer Director David Gray. Town Council has reviewed the documents in form, and I'm requesting that the Select Board approve and execute the acceptance of grant of easement between Richmond Great Point Development LLC and the town of Nantucket over 4 and 6 Honeysuckle Drive.
Any questions?
Move approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb? Brooke Moore?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. Malcolm, I saw you say aye, but just so you know, I still can't hear you. But it's okay. We
So,
got it. Carries.
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Then we have request for approval and execution of an amendment to the memorandum of understanding for the Sheep Pond Road alternative access.
Correct. So, and these few things to overlap into county. So, as we move forward towards the completion of the roadway relocation for Sheep Pond Road homeowners, there have been some minor amendments to the memorandum of understanding, which was executed in May 2025. The town and the county are both parties to the MOU, and I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Vicky Marsh to discuss in more details what those amendments were.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. The amendment that I have put before you is actually just an amendment of the change of the names of the owners that are going to be participating in the easement agreement and in the MOU itself. Jane Johnson, who is trustee of Michael Burns Children's Trust, is withdrawing from participation in the MOU, and then the property owner, Clinton Savings Bank, who purchased 14 to 16 Sheep Pond Road, is now joining as a property owner and will also agree to the assessment of the betterments that's included within the MOU. So I ask for your approval of the execution of the amendment of the Memorandum of Understanding.
I'll move approval.
Any questions?
No, we have a motion to approve. Second.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb?
Yes.
All right.
Brooke Moore?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Vicky.
Tracy. Are there any committee reports? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
And then
moved.
we'll go to
Second.
county. All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb?
Yes, aye.
Brooke Moore?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously.
Yeah. Switch it up on your.
Good evening, all. I'll call the County Commissioners meeting for December 17th, 2025 at 8:57 p.m. The announcements are that the County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. Next up is public comment for items not otherwise on our agenda. We follow the Select Board's protocol as we are as the Select Board as well, per as Dawn stated before. Seeing no public comment, there's no new business that I'm aware of. Next up is approval of minutes and warrants. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Brooke, second by Matt. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Those are approved. Next up is official business, review and adoption of fiscal 2027 county budget. Finance Director.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep.
I might motion before you even speak.
Okay.
It's so simple.
I'm okay if you want to do that, or if you want me to take you through it, I'm happy, whatever the pleasure of the county commissioners are.
I'll second it.
All right, I'm moving. It's the county. It's simple. Second. A motion. You second.
Yeah.
Moved by Matt, second by Brooke. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn? Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Yes, aye.
That was an
No
aye.
offense.
None taken.
Chair
All right.
votes aye. Thank you, Brian. That was that was the
well.
quickest ever.
Nice budget presentation, Brian.
Next up is request for approval and execution of assignment and acceptance of road improvements for Old South Road by Richmond Great Point Development, et cetera, as noted on the agenda. Real estate manager for the town and county, Tracy McDonald, is here to present.
Thank you. So similar to the previous matter for the easement between Richmond Great Point Development and the town, respect with other obligations regarding the roadway improvements within the county layout of Old South Road, which were related in the same memorandum of agreement and coordinated through the planning department. Staff has also fully reviewed this project as well, and I'm requesting the county approve, accept, and execute the assignment and acceptance of road improvements for the personal property, which includes all structures, materials, equipments, parts, pipes, fittings, signs, pavement markings, and other tangible property constructed or installed in connection with the project and shown on an as-built road survey for Old South Road widening and improvement project dated October 27, 2023, and which has been reviewed and approved in form by town council.
Thank you, Tracy. Town Council Vicky Marsh is on as well. If anybody's any questions, does the commissioners have any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made by Brooke, second by Dawn. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. Next up is request and approval of execution of amendment to the memorandum of understanding for Sheep's Pond Road.
Right, so this is exactly the same thing as what Vicky just presented, only it's county commissioners because they are also a party.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made by Brooke, second by Matt. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. Next up is request and approval of execution of amendment to betterment assessment statement for permanent roadway easement of Sheep's Pond, proposed 30, et cetera, as noted on the packet. Tracy?
So this is in conjunction with the same amendments. We had, I'm going to let Vicky speak more specifically, but I believe we had to remove that one homeowner and add the other one into this Exhibit A to the betterment statement. Vicky, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, Tracy's summarized it very well. So the owner that's being removed from the betterment assessment is Jane Johnson, trustee of the Michael Burns Children's Trust. And then we are adding a property owner that purchased 1416 Sheep Pond Road, the Clinton Savings Bank. And I ask that you approve and vote to execute the amendment to the betterment assessment statement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Matt, second by Brooke. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That passed unanimously. Next up, last
Great.
item.
Thank you
is-
very much.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky.
Next up is presentation of request by Center Place Homeowners Association for easement taking by eminent domain for the layout of Egan Lane, et cetera, as noted in the agenda. Here tonight to present this item is Attorney Jesse Brescher, also Tracy Still, and Town Council as well. Jesse? Or Tracy?
So I'm going
Thank
to
you.
do a brief introduction. So real estate office has been working for over a year with Jesse Brescher and the homeowners of Center Place Homeowners Association, which are the abutters to Egan Lane off Old South Road, towards a proposal for an easement taking of the roadway that is currently in an unconventional configuration. I'm going to turn it over to Jesse for a more comprehensive explanation of this proposal. And I just want the board, the commissioners to know that the homeowners have worked really together collaboratively on this proposal, and also with the planning department. And we have Megan Trudell from the planning board on if there's questions for her, and Eric Barth from KP Law can discuss any legal questions you might have. Take it away, Jesse.
Thanks. Good evening. Jesse Brescher for the Center Place homeowners. So this, I'm not exaggerating, has been in the works for over 20 years. I've been working on it for over 20 years, and they were working on it before I got involved. So it's been a long haul. It's taken a lot of work to get us to where we are now in terms of getting all of the homeowners to agree, working with planning, and working with Tracy and Town Council to get us here. I don't want to waste anyone's time, but you've seen the plans in the packet. The existing original creation of this subdivision was unorthodox. I think when it was created, they couldn't get financing to do a traditional subdivision. And so they sort of found a way around the subdivision requirements to create this. And I think planning has been after us to fix it almost since it was created. So the goal, as it stands right now, Egan Lane legally is a driveway. It's not technically a road. And so the idea is that the county would take an easement over the portions of Egan Lane, which would then provide legal frontage to the interior lots within the subdivision. Right now, again, each one of these lots has 50 feet of frontage on Old South Road. And it creates sort of a strip, and then it narrows to a 10-foot strip that winds its way back to the larger piece that then opens up into the sort of interior or rear lots. The goal of all of this is, and ultimately to enable them with the interior frontage to carve off the Old South Road pieces to be separate from the interior pieces. The homeowners have agreed to cooperate with planning in planning's quest to eliminate RC2. They're currently RC2 zoned. The homeowners have all agreed to support a CTEC zoning. They've also voluntarily agreed to place restrictions on the further subdivision that taking of this easement and creating frontage would enable them under RC2 to carve up smaller lots. They don't want that. And that's not what this is about. And so the homeowners, like I said, have voluntarily agreed to place a restriction on the further subdivision, and they are prepared to grant the select board the right of enforcement of that restriction in perpetuity. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. I know it's been a long night, so I don't want to drone on about this, but I'm happy to, if anyone has any concerns or questions, happy to answer them. Bless you.
Any questions?
No, it seems, so you're gonna gain a couple lots on the front. And then there's
So-
another that's subdividable that was like, what, 508, 507, 508, 517?
So yeah, so the idea is that the interior lots would be able to subdivide into no more than two. There are a few exceptions to that. There are two lots in particular where the Egan Lane comes in and takes up the biggest chunk of their sort of 50-foot strip up front. So they cannot create a lot on Old South Road legally. So they would be allowed to have a third lot on the interior piece, but it's sort of no more than anyone else is getting. And the other lot is Roy Egan owns a larger piece, and as part of this, he has offered up or agreed to add a 30-foot wide roadway lot within the confines of his larger lot that would ultimately provide a possible connector to the Van Gilder subdivision, which abuts it. There's a spite strip there now so that it could not be done without approval of planning and going back to them to modify that subdivision. But in exchange for him giving up a 30-foot swath of his land to this roadway, he would be able to have 4 lots there. But really, again, the goal is to sort of maintain what's there now and not to have it explode into 5,000 square foot lots all over the place. They liked the way it sort of set up with the sort of commercial uses and the landscaping and other things sort of up front on the Old South piece, and then the residential component, on the larger back lots.
Oh, I do not. Megan, please.
I would just add too, this has been a collaborative effort between the planning department, real estate, Jesse, the Center Place Homeowners Association, as Jesse mentioned, for, beyond 2 decades. And what could be really problematic from our perspective is this is a 16-acre site in RC2 zoning. I mean, these homeowners could put their heads together and create a 100-lot subdivision under current zoning conditions. And that's something we certainly don't want to see. I don't think the town wants to see, and the current residents of this neighborhood don't want to see. So it's been, a little bit of give and take in the sense that, yes, they will be allowed to create some subdivision, but nowhere near the extent of what existing zoning allows. So it's kind of a subdivision in reverse, if you will.
And I just want to add that their homeowners association was going to expire and they renewed their restrictions. They're going to stay together as a homeowners association. They will still maintain the road. And, so there's no cost to the town. We'll be facilitating something to regularize it for them, but then they're paying for the whole thing and they'll maintain it in the future.
Yes, thank you. I meant to, that was a key point and I forgot.
And then I want to just add one more thing too. They do have a private sewer line and they are all sort of existing on sewers. So I did talk to David Gray. I think that capacity has already been accounted for as well.
Christy.
Thank you, Christy Ferrantella. I just have a question for Tracy and Meg, possibly. Is this deed restriction going to be in perpetuity held by the town, or would it expire? And then my question for Meg is if this impacts anything that's been in front of the planning board recently, because if I recall, there was a request for a subdivision near or on Egan Lane. I just didn't know if this was impacted by that. Thank you.
So it would be enforceable in perpetuity because the select board would hold the restriction. So that's an important component. There was the recent subdivision in the large lot next door called the Van Gilder subdivision. You may notice that's where the Pepsi Frito-Lay building just went up. There are other vacant commercial properties. This could, with further planning board approval, allow circulation through Egan Lane down to Van Gilder. So it's not directly impacted, but it does lend itself to a conversation of creating a circular traffic pattern in that area. So I hope that answered your question, Christy.
Yeah.
Matt?
One more question. Was there, in all these discussions, was there any talk of connection to Hinsdale in any manner?
So no, not connecting Egan Lane. So the lots that have frontage on Hinsdale, part of the amendment to the homeowners association restrictions is that to push the people who have frontage on Hinsdale to use Hinsdale for access as opposed to sending it all down Old South Road and then out Egan Lane. So there is already, and I can have to pull up the document, but a thing that says if you can subdivide to create 3 lots or 2 lots on Hinsdale, at least one of them's got to be using Hinsdale. You can't have everything funneling through Egan Lane.
Right. Yeah, no, and I'm in support of this. The reason I'm asking is when people were complaining a number of years ago on Daffodil or somewhere out there. And I wrote back to every single one of them and said, you know what? Wait till it takes you an hour and a half to get to Old South. And they all told me I was wrong, never going to happen. And they've been calling me back and yelling at me in the Stop and Shop because it's taking an hour to get on Old South. So I think the solution there, which a lot of the neighborhoods don't want to hear, is to get rid of the cul-de-sacs and connect everything in a grid pattern from, all the way out there.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to see, are we working toward that? Because that's the only way I think we're gonna be able to get in, not be sheer gridlock.
Mhm.
But it's fine. I'm in support of this. Do we want to vote?
I don't think we're looking for a vote tonight.
Yeah, so it's
This
just a
was
presentation and then
Oh, good.
the idea is to come back hopefully in January or probably more likely February with the actual taking, but just wanted to sort of lay the groundwork to make sure there weren't any questions or major issues you had so that we'd have a chance to address those if something like that came up.
Dawn, Mr. Chair, sorry, I forgot what meeting I was in. Yeah, I mean, my only thought was, what are the documents that are going to guarantee all of this once if and when we give approval, like just to make sure it all comes as a package. So we know that the surety that all of these limitations and is the zoning change going to town meeting?
Not this year. So
Not this year.
again, there's a memorandum of understanding that commits the homeowners again, stating their agreement to cooperate to get rid of RC2 and to support the change to CTEC. Then there's all the homeowners have already signed a waiver of damages, so they're not claiming any damages in connection with the taking. And then there's a grant of the right of enforcement. Again, so I've done the draft. All the homeowners are ready to sign, but it was sort of a timing. I wanted to make sure that the form of it was sort of satisfactory to the county commissioners before I got everyone to sign and then had to go back to them all and say, wait, we changed these 3 words. Will you approve it? So that's where we are. But the expectation is that all of those items would be in hand at the time we present for the taking. That's the goal.
Right, so we'll have to go through the public hearing process like a normal taking.
Everyone good for now?
I'm good.
Good. Vicky?
So I just want to add that we have received draft versions of these documents and have started to review them. And my colleague Eric Barth has been reviewing them with me to see what additional comments we need to make to them. So they're not really in final form yet. I still am going to be going back to Jesse to make some additional revisions to these documents to make sure that the restrictions are in fact in perpetuity, that the waivers are in fact of damages and appraisals, and that the town's rights under this will be protected, so that we will have the right to be able to enforce the restrictions that we do establish.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
And congratulations, 20 years later.
Well, we'll see. Until the ink is dry and the documents are recorded, I'm not celebrating yet, but we're much closer than I've ever been.
Thank you thank you for hanging in.
Thank you, Tracy. Seeing no commissioners' comments, I don't think. Is there a motion to adjourn county commissioners?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Brooke, seconded by Dawn. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Yes.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Aye.